FEHRL event. And my name is Adewale Adesinu, and I'm the Deputy Secretary General of FEHRL. Today we'll be having two sessions. The first, which will start in a few minutes' time, is titled Let's Talk About Biodiversity and Transport Infrastructure. We've invited experts in the area of biodiversity and transport infrastructure, and this session will be moderated by Agnes from Jena. And then the last session will be session number 4, which will start at 11, overview of research activities. And in between, of course, we'll have a coffee break. So without further ado, I will kindly like to invite Agnes to moderate this session. Thank you very much and have a very nice event. Thank you.
Many thanks, Kole, for the introduction, and good morning, everyone. Thank you for joining us this morning. So I'm very pleased to present this section on biodiversity mainstreaming in infrastructure research, as I work for the French Foundation for Research on Biodiversity, and more specifically, I'm in charge of the Secretariat of the Infrastructure Ecology Network Europe Association, IENE, that I mentioned. And this is a network which gathers a community of practice of scientists and of decision makers on that frontier topic of infrastructure and biodiversity. So if you're interested, I encourage you strongly to join the network. It's an association, so we welcome any new members, and it offers great opportunity for networking, imaging, science and projects, brainstorming, etc. So I will also put the link to the website in the chat in a few moments. As I listened to the panel yesterday on what's new for research, it made me realize how much work we still have to do to be sure that this issue of biodiversity and infrastructure is well tackled in both sectors, because infrastructure is not obviously identified as a driver of biodiversity loss, though they are a major driver, but even greater an indirect driver of land use change. And biodiversity is not identified as a societal priority for infrastructure, whereas the evil twin of biodiversity loss, climate change, is under the spotlight. So these two challenges go hand in hand and mutually reinforce each other. I hope this session will also give you a glimpse of that. And to see that this actually is gaining political attention and momentum that was clearly identified in the final declaration of the COP26 for the Climate Convention in Glasgow last month, where the emphasis was put on ecosystem protection and restoration. So I have a great panel of speakers ranging the spectrum from infrastructure to biodiversity, from the research to the policy sides this morning. And most of the speakers have already been and are confronted every day on this boundary topic, that is where infrastructure and biodiversity issues meet. So I warmly thank all of speakers to agree to join us today to give us their views on this field, where it stands at the moment, what its outlooks are in terms of research and also for policymaking and implementation. So I will be welcoming to start Yannick Autré, a member of the coordination team of the Bison project, and he will be presenting this project to you as an overall introduction to the session. And then we'll have a panel discussion with Rafał Stanecki, the policy officer from the DG Move at the European Commission, Karin Sandberger from the DG Environment at the European Commission, Xavier Leroux, who is Vice Chair of Biodiversa Plus, the EU Partnership on Biodiversity, which was just started, Marc Abadi, Chairman of CDC Biodiversity at Caisse des Dépôts et Consignation, and Christophe Dossaps, the Director of the Sustainable Infrastructure Foundation. So with this super dream team list, I'll start by giving the floor to Yannick, and also he will show you a presentation.
Thank you, Agnes, and hi, everybody. So I will share my screen. Let me know if it's okay.
No, that's not the one I wanted.
Is that okay for everybody? You see my screen?
Yes, we can.
Okay. So thank you. I will make a short introduction to the Bison project, who is a coordination and support action funded by European Commission, dedicated for the first time to analyze how biodiversity and transport infrastructure can be also put into synergies for having common benefit impacts. Under this project, it came also from a long reflection that was started years ago, related to the environmental impact of infrastructure. Here you have some screenshots on really how deep is the impact of infrastructure all over Europe, but beyond. And it's also a challenge for mixing both transport and biodiversity, but it's also an opportunity for us to use this way to bring support for developing also economical issues. It's not only a European challenge, it's also a global one with, in a near future, strong mobilization of new roads and all over the world, but not only roads, it's also concern energy infrastructure that will also have a wide increasing in the coming years. And we need really to develop, facing those major investments, we need also to develop global drivers that can be also positive, both for transport and both for environment as a whole. Simultaneously, since some years, especially since COP14 for biodiversity in 2018, many simultaneous initiatives started, managed by international networks or associations or groups of actors to analyze how transport and biodiversity are working together or not working together. And those initiatives are really taking really a strong impulse on trying to coordinate knowledge and actions. In front of that, we can see that there are several regional initiatives to use research as a tool to facilitate knowledge all over the world. We have IENE, as Agnes said, about in Europe, but we have ICOET in the US, CBIV in South America, ACLI in Africa, or ANET in Oceania and Asia, who are trying to also solve common challenges to be faced. And for sure, we need also to break silos among infrastructure and disciplines to have integrated vision on what can be done. For this purpose, we will use the Bison project as a tool to open doors and also to draft what could be investment for research and innovation in the future. Bison project, it's also a 30 months long project funded by European Commission that gathered 39 partners plus 6 third parties coming from 16 countries. It's a big project to be managed, and among the goal of the project, we look for having a lot of synergies and acceleration of multiple initiatives. And we want also to pave the way for future long-term research and helping to for policy and bringing tools for operators. We have developed a very broad approach on what has to be done for the first time in such a project. We work on all kinds of transport infrastructure, ports, airports, roads, highway, waterways, and also energetical networks related to transport. We also try to break silos among those infrastructure, but not only, it was also among disciplines for technical, legal, and economical issues to be taken in a more holistic approach. It also required to have geographical approach that can balance between Western and Eastern Europe, and ensuring that we can create bridges between what is also awaited from research to feed also innovation and action in the future. among the different main objectives also of the Bison project, we look for having really a better mainstream research and innovation needs identified for infrastructure and biodiversity, but we want also to ensure that infrastructure can be more performant and reliable in the long term. To reach that goal, we need also to develop methods, materials, but also many other actions to be developed. We need also to be aligned with also what is awaited at regional and international levels to ensure a sustainable development of infrastructure and to reach also political goals of those developments. Among multiple outcomes that will be developed within the project, we will have a state-of-the-art. We will also have a very detailed strategic research and deployment agenda that will be fed by research needs and opportunities in the future. And we will also analyze all actual funding for those actions can be optimized to facilitate policy coordination and the mobilization of community of experts among different actors. As you can see, the Bison project is covering a wide part of Europe. A specific topic, a specific element of the Bison project is that 16 ministries of transport are also members of the project. So it's a guarantee that this project is really a strategic one for our ministries to feed our action in the future. But it's also very narrowly linked to infrastructure operator needs and what can also research institute bring to us in the future, including also associations like INE, WWF, IUCN, also, and others are also requesting from that project. The Bison project is also built on 5 work packages. We have 3 technical work packages. First one is dedicated mostly to the state-of-the-art and emerging trends. Second one is dedicated to future research needs, and the last one is more dedicated to innovation. So I will just give you very short examples of some elements that are actually under development. And one of the first elements that we have actually developed, it's also creating Bison glossary to ensure that we share really a same language between transport and biodiversity side, and it's still an ongoing endeavor, but it's really fundamental for us. And we needed this first step to reach all the goals of the project in upcoming future. And already this glossary is already used by FEHRL into the biodiversity group for establishing their first strategy for biodiversity. We also work with the ISO standard on biodiversity, ISO TC331, to help them to draft what will become the first standard on biodiversity in upcoming years. So step by step, it will also be an opportunity for many actors, including in the Bison project, but beyond, to use it as a common language for the future. We also try to develop this common language among different infrastructure life cycle phases. It's very fundamental for us for ensuring that we are aware on what is available on each phase. Other examples that are actually ongoing, we are trying to develop the analysis of emerging trends and future challenges. We select some of them to be developed, but we will have a much wider approach that will be taken into account into especially the research and in the research part of the Bison project for longer term topics. Here you have a shorter term with climate change impact, invasive alien species, nature-based solutions, and economical trends. But we also look for ensuring that innovation, especially for digitalization of infrastructure, will include in a balanced way transport and biodiversity. It's also a fundamental request to have a common approach of data about the role of GIS, digital twin, and BEAM among those elements to develop those elements. We are also looking for having operational tool mixing what is actually mandatory for protecting biodiversity. Here you have a first real technical map on the left side of your screen showing what is already available in Europe. It's managed by German team, and here you have the Connecting Europe facility map that show you European networks. And one of the goals of such a tool, it's also to help European Commission, but also member states to have a better vision on what will be the impact of actual infrastructure or future infrastructure on environment, and to help to integrate them in a better way. For example, France will use this tool in the future to help to have a national map for conflict points of impact on between transport infrastructure and on biodiversity. We also look for what will come in the future. It's also a challenge, and when we drafted the Bison project, we expected to meet more often, but due to the virus, it's also a challenge. But we have to take this into account, and for sure, the health issue is among the topic to be explored about the role of transport and interaction with biodiversity. And we want to develop really a scenario building approach that will be very exploratory for imagining what could be the future. And we will try to involve as much as possible our members and beyond within the advisory group and other interested actors to contribute to this scenario building that will also help us to draft what could be the future and to feed our mind into the research and innovation needs for action. So everything that is already developed is available on the Bison website, but if you have any needs to be more informed on the project, you just have to contact us through the platform, and everything is will be step by step available online. And main deliverables will come by the end of this year, but for sure it will be achieved by the end of next year. So thank you.
Thank you very much, Yannick, for this insight. So I can take one question of clarification, if any, from participants. So we will come back to the main issues that Yannick gave us a glimpse of. So why it is important to take biodiversity into account when working in the transport sector, how to better integrate biodiversity knowledge in transport research and policies, what tools are available for policies and mainstreaming, and what is in store for science. But on the project itself, is there any like a big question mark at this moment from anyone? If not, well, it may also come during the panel discussion, and Yannick stays with us, of course, to start the discussion. So now I will ask Raphael, Karine, Marc, Christophe, and Xavier to stay alert, because I will call you. And also, so this is a panel discussion, so you can speak in a row, but also find a way to say that you want to take the floor if you have an idea that you want to bounce back from a first speaker. So the first discussion I would like to tackle with you is why it is important to take biodiversity into account when working on transport infrastructure. So Yannick gave us some views on that, including the importance of taking into account habitat fragmentation. But I would like to hear first, maybe from Rafael, how do you see things from the point of view of DG Move, and which issues you're looking at specifically related to fragmentation or beyond? And you need to unmute yourself.
Thank you, Agnes. Good morning to everyone. Rafał Stanecki. My name is Rafał Stanecki. I work in DG Move in the Research Innovation Unit, in particular on the transport infrastructure topics. That's why I'm here. It was very interesting from Yannick to hear objectives of the projects, and I think there was a need for such projects. I will have to say a lot of bad things about transport infrastructure, but I hope that by the end we'll also find the positive aspects. So until recently, biodiversity did not constitute a major consideration when funding research innovation in transport infrastructure. The main concern was efficient transport network with technical and safety aspects contributing to the economic objectives. The biodiversity importance became more evident with the increase in knowledge on negative externalities from transport. We see that there are three principal negative externalities of transport on nature and landscape. So the first one is habitat loss. Since transport infrastructure requires land and natural surfaces, therefore transport infrastructure also leads to loss of natural ecosystems, which are natural habitats of plants and animals. Habitat loss is occurring during the building phase of transport infrastructure, but will last over the whole lifetime of the infrastructure. The second negative externality is related to habitat fragmentation, since transport infrastructure can also have additional fragmentation and separation effects for animals. And the main negative effects are caused by large and broad main infrastructure such as motorways and high-speed rail lines. And large wildlife, mammals, as well as small animals are negatively affected by habitat fragmentation. And the third to blame is habitat degradation due to emissions of air pollutants and other toxic substances, and their effects lead to biodiversity loss. Transport infrastructure has and this is my last point, has a direct impact on the first two, habitat loss and habitat degradation, and indirect on emission. Thank you very much for attention to this part, and I hope you still not completely condemn transport infrastructure.
Not at all. Yeah, the issue here is to see how we can work together, and also this is something we discuss a bit in INA, and also which is under the radar in Bison, though it's not the main focus, is also how infrastructure can be opportunities for biodiversity to some extent. So yeah, this is not the focus of today, but we don't want to condemn. We want to work together, of course. So I would like to give the floor maybe to Karine, whether so I can expect that your
in the project.
Oops, sorry, there's some background noise. I would like to ask Karine whether, so I guess you go along the same line of Rafael, but how do you see infrastructure as a challenge in the current biodiversity strategy, for example, on these issues of habitat loss, fragmentation, and pollution? And do you want to add anything on these challenges?
Yes, thank you, Agnes. Good morning, colleagues. Thanks a lot for inviting me to this discussion, which I think is a very important one, and one which actually is long overdue. And in a way, it's thanks to the European Green Deal, which kind of brought protection and restoration of ecosystems to the heart of our thinking over all sectors, so including the transport sector. So I think there is luckily now finally an evolution is really ongoing. Now, the European Green Deal come with a variety, with a whole ribambelle of initiatives, including the biodiversity strategy, which focuses on the protection and restoration of ecosystems and biodiversity, but not only, it also has as a key issue the enabling transformative change. And here, of course, as transport is such a crucial feature of society and economy, of course, transport and transport infrastructure have a key role to play in order to achieve these objectives. Now, of course, habitat fragmentation is one of the key direct drivers of biodiversity loss that is well known. So in this respect, it is confrontational, but I think we are now in a different mindset. We really have acknowledged that we need to work together and collaborate. And I'm quite convinced with this. I was really thrilled to listen to the Bison project, to how people really seek to work together. And I really think the key is within collaboration amongst disciplines. And so I think actually, I hope within the coming years, we may be able to turn this confrontation into a collaboration and a partnership. I truly hope also for the outcome of Bison and all its partners. I mean, it's very encouraging to see that now transport ministries are actually actively thinking about, seeing biodiversity as an important issue and also seeing it as not always as an opposing issue. I think that's really the key if we manage to twist our obstacles into a fruitful collaboration. I leave it like that and look forward to the discussion. Thank you.
Thank you, Karin. And well, that leads me maybe kind of naturally to give the floor to Xavier. So Xavier is, as I said, is Vice Chair of Biodiversity. So this is the new EU partnership on biodiversity, and this includes very published the Strategic Research and Innovation Agenda for the partnership about 2 weeks ago, building also on more than 10 years of projects from biodiversity at the EU level. So Xavier, with that in mind, how does this issue fit in all the research that has been funded by the network so far and the approach that was mentioned by Karin?
Okay, thanks a lot, Agnès and Bison for this. The question was, why is it important to take biodiversity into account when working on transport infrastructure? And I think in the question, I see two points, two elements of answers my side. The first point is that you have no choice. No choice. Why? Because we have to reason transport infrastructure on our planet Earth, which is characterized by a biosphere. You have to reason transport on a planet where there is a living fabric on the skin of the planet. So this is maybe 1 and 3 when you enter the infrastructure aspect. If you enter by biodiversity, I would say in the Anthropocene, biodiversity is now so intermingled with human activities, including transport infrastructure. Again, you have no choice. You have to reason infrastructure, you have to reason biodiversity in the same place. So I think you have to account for biodiversity. Indeed, the answer is yes, you have no choice, and vice versa. It's in 2 ways. Moreover, in the question, I fear that, and it's close to what Karin said, you have a feeling of separation between biodiversity and humans and what they make. And I think it would be good to think about moving away as far as possible from a pure separation between both. That is, if you think about this as a separation, then you have infrastructure, you would see this as a barrier to be overcome regarding movements of animals and etc. Or infrastructure destroying habitats only, etc. So what you can do only is to search for compromises. And maybe it's time to try to rethink a bit infrastructure. It's a bit naive and I'm dreaming here, but still, I think it's worth dreaming a bit here and to try to reason infrastructure thought upstream with biodiversity. That is during the conception phase. This is, I think, why Karin is also calling for more interdisciplinarity, transdisciplinarity in the approach, so that you can fully conceive infrastructure in terms of also ecological infrastructure, etc. So, but to exploit synergies, you have to rethink the way to organize, to interact, and to work.
Thank you very much for these views, and yeah, that's interesting because some of your points here also relate to this life cycle analysis. So Raphael, you mentioned about like how things depend from the construction side to the operation side. Here, Xavier and Karin talk about the planning. So this is also something that the Bison project tries to look at, and which is critical indeed for all the steps in infrastructure. Well, actually, speaking of different phases, so Mark, I think because CDC Biodiversity is working on a report on infrastructure and biodiversity, and you look how to manage existing infrastructure to mitigate the impact on biodiversity, maybe to optimize also biodiversity benefits. So what cross-cutting issues do you see there between the two topics?
Thank you, Agnes. Good morning, everyone. CDC Biodiversity is a strange thing because we are a private subsidiary of a public body, but autonomous from the state. And we are specially dedicated to biodiversity. And the approach we have is to find operative solution to mitigate biodiversity and economic development. And when you talk about transport infrastructure, the first thing to consider is most of them are necessary, for example, for avoiding climate change. To have more highway railways is part of to reduce all the trucks on the roads and so on and so on. So our goal is to find solution, long-term solution, because it is part of the mandate of the French CDC. And we are working to find operative solution with a very strict goal. We don't work for greenwashing. We work only for nature-based solution, long-term solution, and to have a real impact on biodiversity. Our goal is to find solution with a net gain. Even when we work to offset, to compensate bad impact, I agree with Raf and with Karin, there is bad impact for some infrastructure. We try to find a long-term solution. For example, in Southwest in France, we have a contract which is going till 2070 to compensate the bad impact of a new motorway between Pau and Bordeaux. And we also want to find solution. We really take all the ecosystemic issues, not only some species, but all the ecosystemic issues. I think that's our approach. Can be discussed. Maybe it's not very obvious that it is working in each part of the country or Europe or the world, but we think that in France it is possible to find this kind of solution with a very strong partnership with our CDC, because we can find long-term financial option. Also, we will talk about it with European Bank. And I think that it's a real approach to have the both sides, to have good infrastructure and the real management of the infrastructure on biodiversity impact. Thank you.
Thank you. So actually, and you also touched based on the few stuff that we will discuss next main topic, which is about the tools. So you talk about, for example, the offsetting and or compensation schemes. You also mentioned about investments, and that's a natural turn for me to Christophe. Regarding the general impacts on infrastructure on biodiversity from an investor perspective, what do you look at? Do you think in terms of risks and benefits for those impacts?
Thank you, Agnes. So first, maybe just to clarify, who am I? Managing a platform called Source that is being managed by the multilateral development banks. So the African Development Bank, EIB, EBRD, Inter-American, World Bank Group, and the Asian Development Bank. So we have been developing this software for governments to be able to use it to develop their project following international best practices. So we are looking at, with INPA from the Commission, to also have the EU taxonomy embedded into the platform, and to make sure that different international best practices are used by governments during the project lifecycle, during project preparation. So we are now working in more than 40 governments to implement this software with all the MDBs, the donors, in order to have a standardized approach for project preparation, but at the same time customized at the country level for the country specificities. So basically a public good for project development. So that being said, the reason why I'm here is because this initiative that I'm leading has been working with FAST-Infra. So FAST-Infra, maybe you've heard about it. It stands for Finance to Accelerate the Sustainable Transition in Infrastructure. It was developed by CPI, HSBC, IFC, GIF, and OECD. And it was under the auspices of the One Planet Lab that the President Macron launched a few years ago. And now we have Macquarie, BNP Paribas, Mazars that have also joined, and more than 80 institutions that represent the public and the private sector. So it's representing banks, investors, DFIs, insurers, rating agencies, NGOs. So it became quite big in terms of outreach. And what we have been working is on three main initiatives. One is a label, so the FAST-Infra label. So basically what the industry from the stakeholders that I mentioned would like to see when they assess a project, and from an ESG perspective. And of course, the focus on biodiversity is quite important. And that has been led by the Global Infrastructure Facility with Macquarie. And it has been a very important work that has been conducted. And what is being done with this FAST-Infra label now, there will be a secretariat, and there will also be a database for project to be able to be posted there with the label to be followed or not. And what we have done with Source is to digitalize also the FAST-Infra label into the platform for governments to be able to access it when they prepare the project. The second project that FAST-Infra has done is an end-to-end platform. So how governments can be supported during the life cycle, from project preparation to decommissioning, for example, and how this IT platform can help investors to better assess projects at different stages. And that involves, again, many different stakeholders from EPPF in Europe, or Refinitiv in London, or IBM from an IT perspective. So all those actors, we are working together in order to support through digitalization the process of infrastructure development. And the last one is guarantees. How can we ensure that project operators can have a certain guarantee on the cash flow that they have to have in order to maintain the asset during the operation? So those three initiatives have been supported by, of course, a lot of stakeholders. And what we see is concretely, we have been presenting the fast infra label and source related to the end-to-end platform to COP26. And we have had many different investors coming on the panel. And we have had also a dozen of projects that were put by different governments on the platform. So the presidency in South Africa, Mexico, Brazil, Uzbekistan, and Mauritius. So all those governments have put real projects. They also scored the project against the label, and the feedback from the government officials was that we are ready to follow a certain guidance that has been developed and identified by the private sector, and we are ready to follow those guidance. And we are also asking for more support when it comes to digital support. So to answer your question, all these biodiversity assessments have been taken into account from, of course, the people that have been develop it. I'm not saying it's perfect, but at least it is now available when a project is being prepared. And from a private sector point of view, it's very important because a project can only be sustainable if you have a sustainability in all different aspects, and not only, of course, economic or legal or financial, but also environmental, social, and governance. So sustainability is quite complicated when it comes also to infrastructure development, but at least it's there.
Thank you, and we'll come back to some of these points also because you tackled several tools, like concrete tools that you're working with and providing to governments. Karen, you wanted to react to these points?
Yes, thanks a lot, Agnes, to giving me the floor back once again. Listening to the others gave me one thought which I'd like to throw back to you. I mean, IPBES global assessment in 2019 had one of the key messages that we have to get out of our narrow growth paradigm. And I think that now 2.5 years later, somehow we still haven't managed that. And still, this is one of the key foundations in order to achieve our climate, biodiversity, and also the social objectives. So when I think to what I heard in the very beginning, that, I mean, transport of people and freight will continue, I mean, tremendously, but I think we should also consider perhaps we might have another economy that will have less goods that are pushed around another way, because we cannot, I mean, infinitely grow like that. And that's, I think, a fact that we have to face and we should always consider in our thinking. So, I mean, maybe these trends as they're calculated now, still losing the old narrow growth paradigm, the one which according to science, we have to widen the scope. I think in our thinking collaboration, we should have this in our mind, because I mean, now this is a personal comment. I'm convinced that unless we do that, all the very brilliant methodologies, collaboration, everything we do will probably not reach the objectives, because we really need to have a development that is in sync with our planetary boundaries. And the narrow growth paradigm is clearly not, I mean, that is set from all scientific and economic experts that we have. And I think that should be clearly spelled out probably in every meeting. Thank you for giving me this opportunity.
Thank you, Karen. And that's an important point, which kind of undermines actually the next topic I wanted to tackle in the discussion, which are about the current integration of biodiversity knowledge in transport research and policies. So, well, there's this transformative change that we are actually mentioned. Well, this is kind of the official wording that they use in IPBES, but there's also the existing methodology to see how, with our current practices, we can already do mitigate those impacts. And I think several people here in the panel have some views on that. So, for example, Raphael, I would like to give you the floor back, because you were talking about negative externalities. So we know that we can also calculate externalities and internalize those. So do you apply some of these methods at DigiMove, and do you see them as working efficiently?
Thank you, Agnes. I will continue talking bad things about transport now. But coming back what Karin said, I would like to say there is a bit light of the tunnel. There's a huge effort from the transport side to switch to alternative fuels and to electrify transport, with the goal of limiting to the carbon neutral by 2050, which is an enormous effort because of the growing problem. Is we have to, at the same time, we have see the growing problem and we want to make it disappear. So, but it's going on. Then I would, as you mentioned, Agnes, I would look at the external cost of transport, and how much pollution and biodiversity loss cost is an interesting question from the policy point of view. There are these external costs refer to the difference between social costs, so costs to the society due to the use of transport, and the private costs of transport that are borne by the transport user. So, for example, cars exhausting NOx emissions cause damage to human health, and this imposes an external cost. This is because the impacts on those who suffer damage on the health is not taken into account by the driver when deciding on taking the car. In general, this environmental costs, all damages to the environment, nuisance, health costs, material damages, biosphere damages, and long-term risks. And in 2019, an updated handbook on external costs of transport was published, and it had been commissioned by the European Commission, DG Move. And the objective was to assess to which extent the user pays and the polluter pays principles. These principles are implemented in the EU, and how far we are with this full internalization of this external cost of transport, because this is a tool to limit them. And the total external costs of including congestions are staggering 1 trillion euros per year, nearly. The most important are accidents, which cost 29% of the amount, and congestion cost 27%. The calculated external cost of habitat damage was nearly 40 billion from road, rail, and inland waterways, and it was calculated based on the infrastructure length and the average cost factors for habitat loss and fragmentation, habitat fragmentation. As an example, 1 kilometer of highway cost is estimated of 100,000 euros per kilometer. Thank you very much. This was my last point in this part. Agnes, back to you, back to the panel.
Thank you, Rafał. And I think I will turn to Mark now, because we were talking about estimating costs. And so at the CDC, you worked on some methodologies. I understood more from the business perspective, more than from the policy side, and how to support businesses measure their impact and dependencies on biodiversity. So it would be great if you could talk about this methodology. And well, maybe Rafał, you can comment on that too. But for example, are these costs based on the estimated ecosystem services that are lost? What's your basis for calculation? So Mark, and then Rafał, you can note if it's the same for you, or if you want to complement, I can give you the floor back.
Thank you, Agnes. I will speak about a real innovation we are working on. It is a simple goal. You can manage only what you can measure. So it is very difficult to measure biodiversity. It's not like carbon, but we think it is possible. And for 4 years, we have been working with scientists, with the companies, with public authorities to find a tool to measure impact and dependencies on biodiversity for companies, but also now for local authorities. So it is very important to say that it is a real effective tool. Some companies already use it. Schneider Electric, Solvay, the very well-known chemical company, the French Post, the very important in France, the French teacher insurance company, and big, large company. It is based on the concept of the mean space abundance per square kilometers. So we are finding a tool which is able to say what the company does for biodiversity is measurable, and you can find a starting point, and you can find with them the good way to have not loss for the future. And this GBS, the Global Biodiversity Score, use the concept of scope, like for carbon, you have scope 1, scope 2, scope 3, and it is available all along the value chain for each company. So whatever the company is doing, infrastructure, chemical, anything, you can find a real tool with a real signification about loss of biodiversity, which help the company and also the public body, governmental, local authority to find the good way to restore, to regain biodiversity in the future. Thank you.
Thank you. So maybe I'll turn back to Raphael. So Mark mentioned the mean species abundance per square kilometer. How did you, what did you use as a basis for your calculations?
I'm unfortunately not able to go into details of calculation as just a policy officer on transport infrastructure, but I would like to mention why we need it, because we need this information either to influence the developments with fiscality, taxation, or with other regulatory means. That's what the public administration can do, and that's how they use. And this is for the scientists and experts who are much more knowledgeable to give us the tools for policy making. Thank you.
Raphael, you can find on our website, because we work on open source.
Okay.
What we do is open source because we have legal and general interest for that. So you can find anything, and we can be in touch to explain to you what we are working on it.
Thank you, Raphael. And that's an important point as well, which is also a good bridge to what we will tackle next. But thank you for your insights from the policy perspective. Xavier, I will turn to you now, not to discuss maybe a specific methodology on infrastructure, because this is biodiversity looks at much larger biodiversity issues, but maybe more in your experience on how you bring research to decision makers, and more for the policy mainstreaming. So how to integrate biodiversity issues into policy fields that are not primarily concerned about biodiversity. What is your experience with that in biodiversity? Well, first, is this something you do, but I think you do. and what's your experience in that?
Yeah, okay, thanks. So again, two things. In the words used so far, we hear a lot costs, risks, compensation, etc. So it's needed because it's a matter of fact. But in addition, I think it would be excellent to try to promote opportunities, synergies, benefits through new opportunities. That is, I think there is a change of mindset also we need in many sectors actually, and I'm convinced that the infrastructure sector is really a key one where this change of mindset is needed. So the objective is not to do business as usual and then to realize the negative impacts you have and try to find ways to compensate and minimize the negative impacts. So it's really the change of mindset is to maybe conceive, and it would open, actually, it would completely open a new sector or an evolution of the sector without losing, of course, economic opportunities, because it's the way it has to work. But I don't see why it would be the case. And so if we are able to do this, then we would compute these new, the valorization of these new opportunities, these new benefits that we do not exploit so far, because we are stuck in a hold. So I'm sorry, because I'm highly caricatural when I say this. I know that there are a lot already in the field, but when I see the world around me, I think we have to deploy this hugely. So this is one. And the second is linked to your second point, indeed, regarding research. Our research could support this, to try to support a knowledge base, which is hugely needed, because if I'm calling for something completely new and change of mindset, this means it has to be also done in the research domain and supported by scientific knowledge. And this is calling indeed for new alliances between research and some major practitioners, actors in the field, policymakers. And so the way we do this in Biodiversa, and now the future, not the future, the European partnership on biodiversity, Biodiversa Plus, we have actually revised deeply the way we program and we support research. That is, we are calling not for a research that would provide new knowledge and then you would transfer this knowledge to practitioners in the field, because if you do this, what you will produce will likely be completely, well, largely not relevant, not useful for practitioners. So what we are calling for is to fund, to support consortia mixing researchers from different disciplines as needed with practitioners, having also engaged with, as needed, decision maker, local authorities, etc., so that the research is performed. They are co-designed early, and they are then co-developed through these consortia, these alliances of academic and non-academic actors. And if you do this, and we have testimonies for this, we have demonstrations that if you do this, indeed, you can have impact. The knowledge generated will take into account very early the needs of the non-academic actors, and the way the knowledge produced will be uptaken will be hugely increased, of course, if you do this. So, and this is a challenge, last point, for the scientists. You have to realize that it's a challenge for the non-academic actor, but also for academia. And so this is why we have produced toolkits, guidance, handbooks. So we have produced a stakeholder engagement handbook, which is hugely used in the research community now, but also for policy relevance. We have produced a guide explaining what it is, because many scientists, for them, the policy world, it's something very, very weird, very far. And so we have to explain the policy landscape, how policy works, and how you can engage this kind of policy stakeholders. So it's a lot of things. And so my main message here is innovation, and we are calling for transformative change. We have to apply this to ourselves in our activities. This is true for research programmers and funders. This is true for practitioners, etc. And you are very well placed to have a key role in this context, I think.
Thank you, Xavier. This is quite inspiring, and also, well, since Bison project is built on this multi-stakeholder principle, then I understand that it cannot fail with this formula. So let's applaud the better. Rafael? Do you have an reaction?
Yes, thank you. Thank you, Xavier, for this very important point. But it brings me a reflection that this kind of research, combining research and professional sector, is present in Horizon Europe with so-called partnerships. In transport area, we have 2.0 from the car to lower car emissions. We have hydrogen. We have in waterborne aviation. There are certainly others in the cluster 6 which deal more directly with biodiversity. But I think this is a very valid point, and the Commission is moving into this direction. Thank you.
Thank you, Rafael. That's also good. We'll talk about the main clusters of research a bit later, maybe, but that's also something important to keep in mind. So now I think we've tackled like how the research can work upstream to inform on the impacts and opportunities that infrastructure create for biodiversity. Now I would like to move the discussion to the concrete implementations and the actual tools that are available. So several were mentioned by the speaker already, Christophe, Mark, among others. So I would like to come back to that a bit, and maybe so for coming back to you, Christophe, about the tools the banks use. I'm not sure all the audience is familiar with the EU taxonomy that you mentioned. It may be interesting to discuss, to explain a bit this taxonomy for investment, and also about the environmental impact assessment. So you mentioned they are integrated in the guidance and tools that you develop for governments. Do you, well, coming from the field of biodiversity, I've often heard that biodiversity is not that well covered in the environmental impact assessments, or that the environmental impact assessments are not followed that much when a big development project has to take place. So what are your views on that? Are those tools more used now, more efficient? I speak from a nearly 10 years ago perspective. So what's your outlook on that now?
Thank you. For the EU taxonomy, I think we have Rafael and Karin that would be better placed to answer that question. The only thing that I can say from an external point of view is that I think, from my point of view, is one of the most advanced policy benchmark that members of the EU will have to adhere in order to have projects to be recognized and funded by the Commission or EIB. So our main counterpart is the European Investment Bank, and they are. This is a priority for Europe, and I sincerely believe that it should also be applied in other jurisdictions outside of the EU. But then, in terms of its content, of course, I will let Rafael and Karin to answer that question. But from our perspective, and then when I say our perspective, is the multilateral development banks, we definitely took the decision to implement it into the platform, and we are doing that, of course, with the Commission and with ECFIN as well. So what SOURCE does, practically speaking, is that the MDBs agreed to make a public good. So this IT platform, so it's really a software, it's a project development tool. And because of our governance, basically the MDBs, we can work directly with governments around the world. So as I said, we have more than 40 governments that have requested the integration of the platform. Concretely, what that means is we go into a country, we do a mapping of their regulatory framework, a mapping of their processes, and a mapping of their digital tools. And then we connect to those digital tools with the platform, so they can have e-procurement platforms, contract management platform, consultant management platform, etc. They also have their own PPP laws, they have their own processes, own regulatory frameworks. So all the platform is customized on that perspective, but we also have a set of questions that has been developed by the industry. So we're talking about more than 100 companies, from contractors, investors, lenders, advisors, MDBs, international organizations. And we have a 40 subsector templates, so specific template for a BRT, an LRT, MRT, road, etc. So how it works is that once we implement the platform in a country, like for example in Uzbekistan, and what we are doing in South Africa, or other countries, even France and Germany are going to use the platform for the subnational level. What happens is that all the project officers from the different ministries can follow through this general guidance to answer questions specific to a subsector, but also to access international guidance like IFC performance standards, G20 project preparation principles, OECD PPP principles on governance. So there are different methodologies that we have embedded at different junctures of the life cycle of the project, so that government can access this important knowledge at the right time, because usually they have to look for it. They are not even aware of it. It's sitting on a shelf or on a website and they don't know where to go. So by having the platform to be embedded as a day-to-day activity, then we can embed all this knowledge. And this is why having the EU taxonomy, for example, to be available for the government to see how the government is performing against the EU taxonomy will be very valuable for the government at the early stage to see how they are performing against such and such methodology. So this is very practical, and we are funded by donors and MDBs in order to make this platform available for free to governments. And in terms of the biodiversity question, what has been done is that the Fast Infra label, they also looked at the EU taxonomy to develop their Fast Infra label. So that has been also very important. Plus the MDBs, they also looked at their internal safeguards and methodologies. And plus looking at GRESB, if you know them, it's an evaluation entity to look at projects that are sustainable. So biodiversity has been taken into account. As I said before, it is of course not perfect. And if we are, of course, honest, we know that the best way to preserve biodiversity is not necessarily to have infrastructure. So, but at least what are the best ways in order to preserve and conserve biodiversity? But those questions have been embedded in many different methodologies, AISI from the World Bank and EBRD, SII from the MDBs through the Infrastructure Cooperation Platform, in Fast Infra label, plus inside source. So there are different methodologies. There is not one standard. Unfortunately, in infrastructure, there is no standard. So that's unfortunate, but that's the truth. And hopefully the EU taxonomy can become a very strong one for the EU member countries. So I will stop there. I hope I answer all your questions, but of course, if I forgot something, please let me know.
No, thank you. That was quite thorough, and well, being not a specialist of infrastructure myself, this just opened so many doors and windows. I look forward to jumping in. Maybe I will turn to Mark now to bounce back also on something that Christophe just mentioned about well, I think it was hardly touched the principle of the avoid, reduce, or avoid, mitigate, offset hierarchy. So you talked indeed quite a bit about the offsetting projects, but do you also support companies to implement the hierarchy from the start and then to avoid harm? And do you feel this is useful? And then, since we keep talking about the EU taxonomy, do you integrate this as well in your process?
Sure, it was the main reason why, because the CDC Biodiversity was created at the end of the last century. It's to offer to the company a good and long-term approach for avoid, reduce, and compensate, which in France exists since 1976, and I think that everybody agree it is not really working, because a lot of projects try to avoid, reduce and compensate. So what we have done is to offer solution, nature-based solution, and to find innovative concepts. So we work with the French government in the south of France, in the site of Cossur, which is near Marseille, and we take a very large wasteland, and we create what it's called now in France, the first French national site for compensation. So CDC Biodiversity take a very bad, very wasteland, and it is what you are looking just behind me. Now it is real, and everybody agree, academic, NGOs, everyone say it is a real natural site in a very hot spot for biodiversity, which is the plain of Lacroix. It is very special. And we are trying to find other sites to do the same. We have, Rafa, we have been really helped with the European Investment Bank with a natural capital facility, which is not very well known in France. I don't know in other countries in Europe. Only 6 projects have been supported by the European Investment Bank from this natural capital financial facility. And I think it is very important because it is a large, it is about 350 hectares. So it is a real ecosystem close to a protected area in France, Réserve nationale of Lacroix. And I think it is very important to do that. We are trying to promote some other site in France. And I will add, if you agree, Agnes, that for us, taxonomy is very important. The GBS is working to be really connected to taxonomy, because if you don't have the good measure of the biodiversity impact, you can't help taxonomy implementation for the company. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mark. I will now turn to the colleagues from the EU, and maybe first Rafael, about the existing policy tools or guidance that you use to support this mainstreaming. There were quite a few principles or tools mentioned by the colleagues already, so feel free to comment on that, or also bring your own views.
Thank you, Agnes. I maybe start with a short explanation. One is do no significant harm principle is for other participants, because it was mentioned by Christophe. To understand what this term fully covers, we have to look for this EU sustainable taxonomy. There is a classification system allowing to determine what can be considered as a sustainable activity according to several horizontal criteria. And this morning I heard Philippe Lambert, Green MEP, saying that it's a kind of bio label in investment. So I like it very much. Sustainable activity is expected not to be significantly contributing to environmental objectives and should not harm any of 6 objectives. One of these objectives is protection and restoration of biodiversity and ecosystems. In research area, this principle has been introduced at the programming stage of work program Horizon Europe, because the program has been co-created to support research and innovation activities that respect climate and environmental priorities of the Union. And at the project level, it's been included in the application form. So applicants can refer to the DNSH, do no significant harm principle, when presenting the research methodology and the expected impacts of the project. To show that the project will not carry out activities that make significant harm to any of the environmental objectives. Also in line with the quite recent Recovery and Resilience Facility, so the 40 billion fund to help recover post-COVID recovery, and requirements of the European Green Deal, they imposed that research and innovation activities should comply with the DNSH principle, and it's need to be assessed both for activities carried out during the project, but also over its lifetime. And references to DNSH are in 3 clusters: 4 for digital industry and space, 5 climate, energy, mobility, and 6 food, bioeconomy, natural resources, agriculture, and environment. Because of this particular, because these 3 clusters have particular relevance for environment outcomes and impacts. Unfortunately, evaluators will not score application in relation to the compliance with the DNSH principle unless specifically stated in the work program. And for the moment, it is only in EIC, European Innovation Council calls. The last things that DNSH principle start to appear in the new pieces of regulation. Or in my transport area, a revised 10T proposal, which is scheduled later this month, so next week, there will be a requirement that in realization of trans-European transport network, this has to be consistent with DNSH principles. Thank you, Agnes. That was from me on the topic.
Thank you, Rafael. And I see the clock is turning, and I always can't keep my good resolutions of keeping the time. So I'll just move quickly to the last part of the discussion I wanted to cover, which is what's in store for science. And Rafael, if I can just keep you with me to discuss the strategic transport research and innovation agenda. So it's because you mentioned that at least this do not harm principle, significant harm principle is also in the research clusters. And can you give us some insights of how biodiversity is covered in the area for cluster 5, for example?
Thank you, Agnes. I'm sorry for taking the floor again. In 2020, DG Move published a strategic research innovation agenda in transport infrastructure. And there are numerous, of course, areas for research. And one of them was sustainability, environment, and resilience. The goal was preservation of biodiversity and landscape, and there are 2 proposed actions for further research. First was to standardize procedures for preserving and restoring the landscape and to promote best practices for preserving the ecosystem along transport infrastructure. And the second one, referring to what Xavier mentioned at the beginning on the conception phase, to analyze and promote a role of infrastructures as a connector of fragmented habitats from barriers to corridors. So these were 2 ideas which then feed into the work program. And this Bison project is the last project, the project of the last year of Horizon 2020. From 21, there is Horizon Europe, a 95 billion program. Cluster 5, climate, energy, mobility, there is 15 billion. Biodiversity is one of key strategic orientation there, so cannot be forgotten. And there are, I would like to just, there are example of three examples of topics which in the current work program relate to biodiversity. Social science for land use strategies in the context of climate change and biodiversity challenges. This is a 20 million topic. The second one, let nature help to do the job, rewilding landscapes for carbon sequestration, climate adaptation, and biodiversity support, 17 million. And the last that I was working on and I follow, it's a climate resilient and environmentally sustainable transport infrastructure. We focus on inland waterways. That was from my cluster 5 infrastructure research innovation point of view. Over to you, Agnes.
Thank you very much, Rafael. And so, I'm glad to. It's much welcome that these two topics are getting mainstream in Horizon Europe, and that can also really help bridge the gap in policies. Well, speaking of strategic research and innovation agenda, Xavier, about Biodiverse A+ and its potential contributions in the field, what do you see, even if like you do not have plans ahead of the next 7 years, but do you see opportunities?
So thanks. Maybe for those around the table, the partnership we are talking about, the European Partnership on Biodiversity, it's a joint venture between countries, regions, and the European Commission. It has been co-designed between all these actors. And this means also that it will be articulated to the overall Horizon Europe programming, making sure that we have an added value in what we make as compared to what will be made directly by the EC in Horizon Europe. So this said, the way we will proceed, we will launch from 6 to 10 flagship programs that will gather a range of activities in a comprehensive manner. So it will include mapping exercises, strategic analysis, definition of common priorities. We will be in a position to launch larger joint calls to support research, the kind of research I was talking about, co-design and co-developed with practitioners, etc. And here it will be each of them, it will be 42 million calls typically, but also a range of activities to better engage with these practitioners to, well, maybe knowledge brokerage activities, support to policymakers, etc., etc. So I will, but imagine that these flagship programs, they will be defined by the impact we define, we expect, and then we will conceive the program and all its activities accordingly. And part of them, I will cite two examples of programs. One has been launched already, and it's about biodiversity monitoring, because there is a need to evaluate so the trajectories of biodiversity. For instance, here today, what we discuss, it's fundamental to agree on common indicators, common variables, but also approaches to measure biodiversity, to quantify the trends, etc. And it's not neutral, because from one sector to another, from one country to another, there is a risk that it's not made. And this is why, for instance, you have the ISO 331 on biodiversity work. And so we will make this by supporting research, but also supporting directly monitoring, promoting also new tools, new approaches for high throughput biodiversity monitoring, and furthermore, harmonization across borders, across countries, to finally establish a network of harmonized biodiversity monitoring schemes across Europe. So this is one major objective. And I think it can directly not only benefit, it should engage with the transport sector, because I think there is a need here, and you have also a lot of expertise, so it's a two-way engagement. Second example of program, it will be a program, likely, it's not decided, but it's in the possible priorities, on urban biodiversity and nature-based solutions. And I will not say more, but you see, with such a topic, for sure, there will be a need also to deploy a range of researches and programs, maybe demonstrators on this. And we plan to do this in collaboration with another partnership from Cluster 5. I think it's a DOT partnership. So we have engaged, we have prepared, frame a bit the possible collaboration. So to be followed, but the idea is to tackle this. And as you can see, it's very interesting, because to do this, we will have to cross borders here between clusters, and so which is something. So I think it's a good example of to do the job, we will have to learn how to work between a range of actors. I was saying this, but here it will be also the case between DGs, between partnerships, etc.
Thank you, Xavier. And that would be a great demonstration as well of how these two fields work together. So I would like to give the floor to Mac very briefly, if you can make it short, to talk about your work on future scenarios, actually as part of the Bison project. And this scenario exercise is also a very good indicator of what's in store for research, what will be the next main priorities of research. So can you give us some views on that?
Thank you, Agnes. Maybe we are part of the Bison project that Yannick talked about at the beginning of the panel. And for us, because we are a subsidiary of a public and general interest institution, I think we are very regarding about financial aspect. We have to find new innovative solution for accounting, for financial approach, blended finance, long-term approach, because infrastructure need long-term approach. The ROE is about 60 or maybe more long-term to have a real return on invest for the investor, public or private sector, as the channel the railway shows. So we are working to find new solution and new accounting approach of the nature capital, because I think it is important to think about it. So I think it is very important to link the approach about biodiversity and how to repair, to restore biodiversity in a long-term approach, but also to work on the finance for infrastructure on the same field, because it is the same problem. We have to find new solution, not business as usual, as everyone has said before me. And it is for us a very important topic, because it is not technical. It is how to find, with the Green Deal, with the natural capital facility from the European Investment and the Commission, to find such approach also with the financial sector. We are working with the long-term investor in Europe. There is an association with the CDC, with the Cassa di Conciliation from Italy, with KfW from Germany. And it is very important to have all these people around the table to help to find very innovative solutions. Thank you.
Thank you, Mark, and thank you for keeping it short. Well, to close the loop, actually, I would like to go back to Yannick for maybe a final word and taking off your hat as a Bison project coordinator and putting the hat of also being a representative of a French Ministry for the transition. What do you see as the step maybe after Bison, which will have brought the community, brought the agenda? What can research do to support ministries like yours or all over Europe to better mainstream biodiversity in the infrastructure sector?
Thank you, Agnes. I will now speak in name of ministry. So our ministry is like a Swiss knife. We have almost everything under the same roof. We have also transport, we have energy, we have also environment, housing, so many things all together. And since more a decade, we had developed the need also to work together to achieve common goals. And I think that it's also an opportunity with this roundtable to show that we need an holistic approach to achieve our different goals to protect biodiversity, but also to have more sustainable transport infrastructure, to have also research dedicated to support decision making and to be able to bring tools for innovation. And I think that we also highlighted the need to continue to deepen this action, but it will require time and it requires efforts, especially regarding what we face since close to 2 years. And it's really a challenge to work remotely, to exchange in that way. And I would like also to thank the FEHRL to offer us the opportunity to meet together and to have this opportunity to exchange in a wide approach. And what we are doing at the national, European, or international level is really interlinked with different objectives that we have to face. And within the Bison project, even if the project is still ongoing, we are already trying to imagine what could be the future of maybe next steps. And even when we drafted the project, it was included in the last H 2020 research call, as Rafael said. And at this time, transport and energy were not merged in the same cluster. I think, if possible, we should also enlarge our approach to energy network, because we will not be able to have a different separated approach between transport and energy, and we need to build really a common tree of knowledge for action in the future. And for reaching that goal, we will also need to deepen some key points that have been highlighted today, like legal issues, like economical models, like standardization of data. And I think that all those points will also need to be deepened in the near future if we want also to have the tools to be available, to be developed, and to be shared, because one of the key elements is also to avoid redundancy and to avoid to reinvent the wheel. And we have also to coordinate our forces to have common tools to work all together and not to work independently from each other. I think it's really one of the key challenges. And for reaching that goal, the tool, the CSR, as a coordination and support action, is really a very fundamental tool to help us to bring our ministries, companies and other actors to work together in really a good framework of actors. And it's really a fundamental tool that we don't use enough, I think, for innovative action. And it will be maybe my last word. I think it's really an opportunity for us that we do not have so much to create something. And I think that the Bison project and the opportunity to exchange today, it's also an opportunity to create something that has not been done before. And really thank you for everybody for being there today, and for all the team who also contribute to this endeavor. And we have so many steps to reach, but it's really great to create something, and not yeah. Thank you.
Thank you, Yannick, and I just join you to thank all the panelists. I hope but participants who I expect to come more from the infrastructure field are now convinced and more aware also of what is at stake with biodiversity, that it's as important as climate change, and that it can be worked together. Personally, from my initial statement at the beginning of a session, I will leave more optimistic about the capacity and actually everything that is already ongoing between the two fields, and how people speak together and work together, either in research or in policy. So I'll just like to really thank all the panelists who gave their time and their brains to make this session happen. My apologies to Thierry and Wole and the team at FEHRL for the 5 minutes delay, but thank you, as Yannick said, for also making this happen, and in such a specialized event to have a place to discuss biodiversity and infrastructure. That's a unique opportunity. So thank you very much. Have a good coffee break, and let's look forward to the next session and the rest of the forum.
Thank you very much. Bye-bye. Thank you.
Thanks a lot.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
It's 11, so I suggest that we start. So nice to meet you virtually. My name is Xavier Cocu. I'm from the Belgian Road Research Center. I'm very pleased today to moderate this session with several very interesting contributions. I'm also the chair of the research coordinator. I'm very pleased to chair this group together with my colleague Ursula Blum from BAST, who is also in this virtual room. So hello, Ursula. So this last session of the FEHRL conference will highlight the current research activities that are performed under the FEHRL umbrella. So this includes, for this session at least, 2 FEHRL initiatives related to big data and to low noise pavement, and 6 projects that were or are funded under a CEDAR program or under Horizon 2020 program, in which FEHRL and its members have been or are actively involved. So through the 8 presentations, we will address the issues of data, asset management, resilience, risk management, and robotics in transport infrastructure. A very interesting program, I think. So thank you for joining us. I will very immediately give the floor to Dirk Jansen. So the timing is quite tricky. So we will start directly with a presentation from Dirk, who is head of section at the German Federal Highway Research Institute, BAST, and leader of the BDPAVE initiative that stands for, as you can see, Big Data for Pavement Management and beyond. Dirk, the floor is yours.
Yeah, thank you very much. Thank you very much. And I will start now. Just give me a second. Big data and smart data technologies are rapidly evolving and touching more and more areas of our everyday lives. Not only because we have the possibility to use the internet at all the time and in all places. It is obvious that traffic management related issues are at the forefront. Services such as Google Maps navigation, which are able to make decisions based on very accurate traffic flow data, have become an integral part of our everyday lives. However, the underlying technologies and the algorithms differ only slightly from each other. Transfer to other disciplines and subject areas is therefore possible, provided that the technologies can be penetrated and thus adapted. The creation of structures and accessibility to relevant data sources are in the forefront here. The goal of BDPAVE is therefore to do exactly this for the field of pavement management. We have therefore made it to our mission to bring together experts from the fields of pavement maintenance and big data technologies in order to create added value. Since the focus is on the adaptation and the use of existing knowledge, BDPAVE is an initiative that helps to manage knowledge and also to generate knowledge. Thus, existing project results are used synergistically and targeted projects are initiated among FEHRL members. The aim is to investigate the entire process chain of converting big data into information in order to achieve improvements in asset management. BDPAVE is only a blueprint for this. The insights and methods gained here will also serve the other disciplines of the FEHRL institutes and the relevant stakeholders in the future. Big data is often understood to mean only an exceedingly large amount of data. In many cases, this is absolutely correct and it makes sense. If you look, for example, at the hours of video material uploaded to YouTube per hour, it is clearly big data. It is equally clear that managing and analyzing this amount of data manually is not feasible at all, and automated is very difficult. So this applies not only to the IT hardware requirements, but also to the algorithms and methods that are used. Let me briefly explain how we understand the term big data. According to this, data can be structured as well as unstructured or chaotic. It can occur quickly and perhaps unexpectedly in quantities, and also have only a short time of real value. Data have different formats and present themselves to us in different ways. It can be precise, but also have a certain value when they are inaccurate. And big data occur in masses, of course. Yet the value of smaller amounts of data should not be underestimated. All of the aforementioned manifestations of data thus have a meaning, even if it is not obvious at first glance. For example, can you do anything with the lateral acceleration value recorded by your car? Probably not, but if you overlay this value with, for example, weather data and times of day, and evaluate the data not only from a single vehicle, but from a large number of vehicles at the same location, you can obtain valuable information for identifying road damage and condition trends. Admittedly, this is a simple example where human intelligence is not yet very challenged. However, if you scale this up, both by the amount of data and the number of locations, a handling with our human intelligence and Excel spreadsheets will immediately reach its limits. Artificial intelligence therefore plays a significant role. It is primarily about translating human expert knowledge into algorithms and processes. Following rules, sounding out behavior in borderline areas, and learning reactions from it form the basis of artificial intelligence. The steps for these are mostly similar. First, the existing data must be checked, supplemented, and cleaned. Then, patterns and rules have to be recognized. From this, applicable knowledge can be generated and behavior can be predicted. The advantage here is that limits such as data volumes and data diversity no longer play a role. We must be aware of this and therefore also consider data sources that at first and second glance do not seem to be related to our question. All this is addressed by BDPAVE. First of all, we make existing expert knowledge and methods tangible and also derive improvement potentials and needs from them. Furthermore, it is about identifying data sources. In doing so, we explicitly look for data we are already familiar with, such as profile data, but we also want to find and understand new innovative data sources. An example for this is floating car data. Accessibility to data sources is a hurdle, both technically and administratively. These hurdles need to be overcome in work package number 3. Since BDPAVE will differ from the familiar pavement management and trans-European results are to be achieved, failure modes and models have to be defined. The heart is our work package number 5, which is the big data work package. Here, the methods, the processes and algorithms are to be developed that generate a usable output from big data, the so-called smart data. The transfer to test scenarios and the adjustment of the models to then form the conclusion. In the following, I will try to present the contents and the progress achieved so far in more concrete terms. An international survey and expert interviews were conducted to describe existing procedures and identify development potential. It turned out that the data situation on road conditions in Europe is quite good. However, there are data groups such as bearing capacity data and environmental parameters that are less accessible. Data sources that provide information on other assets in the context of pavement management and add value to automated driving and climate change issues are particularly desired. Big data methods require big data. For example, the traffic speed deflectometer, which is increasingly present in Europe, is a measurement vehicle that collects data on the internal condition of road pavements at network level. Many of these vehicles are now multifunctionally equipped to also collect data on surface condition and the surrounding area. The MESAS available at BUS is such a measuring vehicle, the data from which is used as an example here for BDPAVE. MESAS records the bearing capacity, the evenness, the surface image, the surroundings in the frontal image, the road geometry, and with the help of a ground penetration radar, looks into the depth of the pavement. Every 10 meters at normal traffic speed, around 60 georeference values are produced. With a usual measurement performance of 400 kilometers per day on motorways, this means that 2.4 million values are available per measurement day. Established evaluation backgrounds exist for some of the data groups, but not yet for others. However, evaluation backgrounds for the linked holistic view of the data do not exist and are the goal of the research to be achieved here. Here you can see a section of the data stock in a table and in a graphic. You can clearly see gaps in the data table as well as peaks and patterns in the chart. Each of these conspicuous features has a reason. They are invalid measurements because of the measuring range was left, bridge structures that differ significantly in their characteristics, local anomalies due to road damage, or simply erroneous measurement results. In order to differentiate in these cases between measurement errors and valuable but interpretable statements about the road condition, expert knowledge is necessary. This process is called data cleaning. The sole exclusion of data rows according to simple rules such as if data cell is empty, then mark the data record as invalid, does not lead to the desired result. So if possible, all cases should be compiled as an exemplary learning sample together with experts. Rules are to be derived from these cases, implemented in programming, and applied via an extended sample. The result is again to be evaluated and serves as input for improving the rules. Artificial intelligence methods are able to derive their own rules from this try and error and the combination of different rules. For the case at hand, this is extremely important as data cleaning cannot be applied manually to the large amount of data we have. It is therefore necessary to map the expert intelligence by means of artificial intelligence. Then the data mining begins. This can also be done with the methodology of supervised learning. Another methodology is that of unsupervised learning. We are currently using this, for example, to find patterns for evaluating the measurement data. The goal is for the algorithms to find their own class boundaries purely based on data by means of clustering. Since this is possible in several dimensions and is linked to various decision-making processes, the method goes beyond the application of purely statistical methods. Fundamentally, however, clustering is still based on mathematical and statistical methods. There are various methods of clustering which we evaluate in the context of BDPAVE, as well as the best programming languages and libraries to use for this. The so-called K-means method is very popular, and I will explain it now. In the first step, a number of centers which represent the clusters are quantified randomly inside of the database. In the second step, threshold values are set based on the distances of the data points to these centers. In the third step, the distances of the data points to the centers are analyzed, and as a result, the position of the centers is optimized. This is repeated until an optimal and stable result is achieved. With the final distance of the center points to each other, cluster boundaries can then be defined. The methodology thus learns independently to achieve the optimal results. Whether the result is also robust and not a product of chance is checked by means of multiple repetition and evaluation of the result deviations. It is thus possible, for example, to derive a purely data-based evaluation of bearing capacity data for a road category. We have done this exemplarily for a sample of 54-kilometer data of motorway in Western Germany. First, data cleaning was carried out. About 42,000 data sets remained for the subsequent data mining. The result of data mining is the purely database determination of logical threshold values. However, as with all methods, it is important that the results are checked for relevance and correctness, even if only on a random basis. In the case shown here, the comparison was carried out with the assessment values calculated according to mechanical models, and it had a positive result. However, the results can also give reasons to question both the data-based and the mechanically based calculation model. An underestimated instrument for this is the georeferent visualization of the data, but also for the big data analysis themselves, clear georeference allocations are of particular and also underestimated importance. We as road engineers must become more aware of this in the future. This means, for example, that more emphasis must be placed on an unambiguous and accurate documentation of, for example, drill core positions and similar field test data. The challenge with a project like BDPAVE is to bring together road engineering expertise and the data science expertise. The conditions for this are in place in FEHRL and the FEHRL network. To build up corresponding networks, we have organized workshops to which external companies and institutes have also been explicitly invited. And this network is still in its infancy, and we would be very pleased if you were also interested in supporting the BDPAVE initiative. Thank you very much for your attention. I will now close with showing you our brand new image video, curtain up for this.
What does it take to make a journey smooth and enjoyable? Most of all, it's the road itself. A good road surface is often taken for granted, but every smooth road is the result of a deep understanding for road construction, management, and interpretation of data. The FEHRL initiative, BD-PAVE, brings together the expertise of 32 road research institutes and their newest scientific findings across Europe and beyond. Working closely with infrastructure owners, FEHRL has access to unique domain knowledge, like construction plan, road condition, and traffic load data. Data that builds the foundation for smart pavement deterioration models that make roads more resilient. In BD-PAVE, we collect traditional and new data sources with cutting-edge technologies to turn big data into smart data, relevant and actionable. Our models will help better predict deterioration of road surfaces so that maintenance measures can be planned and undertaken ahead of time, with a minimum of investment, keeping the impact of roadworks on traffic flow low. A smooth journey is something everyone hopes for. Let's create it together. To discuss how you can get involved, get in touch at bdpave.eu.
Thank you very much.
Thank you to you, Dirk, for this overview of some activities within BD-PAVE. So, as you can see, a very professional approach within this FEHRL initiative. So we have time for some questions. May I open the floor for some minutes then? So please, if you want to ask something to Dirk and the BD-PAVE team as a whole, I would say.
I think there's a question in the chat about data sets being available as open source. It's an interesting question.
Thank you.
This is indeed a very interesting question. I think, or I guess this will depend on the type of data. So, for example, everything which comes from public side, like from Bus in Germany, has to be under the open data strategy be published in the near future. Otherwise, we deal with data from companies, for example, floating car data, and I think this will be not easy to publish that. But my personal aim is, and I think this is also the aim of the group, is that sample data which we use at BD-PAVE to build up the system to get our knowledge will hopefully be published for further developments.
Thank you, Dirk. Thank you also for this question. Something else? Any other? Yes. So you get the questions I guess. Dirk, yes. Okay, thank you.
I'm sorry that I think I cannot answer this question because I'm not familiar with this Cefiware context broker. Maybe you can explain, or I will answer it later on by email.
Yeah, I could explain if I have 1 minute. Connecting Europe facility implemented FEHRL context brokers. It's you're making a data model for road. Then each road agency, it's a linked object data. So you have metadata and actual data. So you're making a data model. I would place a link for smart data models into chat. And then road agencies all over the Europe could interchange their, for example, quality data, thus forming data sets for narrow network training, for data science analysis, etc. It's a great mechanism. It's used by IFO Trust Consortium. making experiments, and from next year it will run into Europe-wide implementation in energy domain, in smart city domain, and others. So I would be happy to share with you this experience.
Yeah, thank you very much.
Yeah.
Very interesting, and I will take it to the BDPAVE group. Thank you. So,
we can maybe take a last question.
Yeah,
there is one in the chat.
Okay. This depends from country to country. In Germany, we scan our federal network, for example, every 4 years, the whole network. But there are other intervals, for example, in Scandinavia and France and other countries. I cannot give a holistic answer to this.
Thank you, Dirk. Thank you also for the questions. So should you have any other questions, of course, please feel free to contact Dirk Jansen, and the chat is still also open. So I suggest then we move to our next speaker. So Mrs. Margherita Costavicilli is a project manager at the Institute of Communication and Computer System at the University of Athens. So ICCS in short, was the coordinating partner of the RESIST project, a research and innovation action that has been funded under the Horizon 2020 program. So you will present us some results from this project. The floor is yours, Margherita. Thank you.
Thank you. Let me share my screen.
Please.
Okay. I hope. Can you see my screen?
Not yet. No, we get it. Yes.
Okay, great.
It is.
Okay. So hello everyone. My name is Margarita Costavicilli, and I'm project manager at the Logistics and Maritime Unit of the Institute of Communication and Computer Systems. And today I will present you the RESIST project that's regarding the resilience of transport infrastructure against extreme events. So let me start with the project overview. RESIST has been submitted under the topic resilience to extreme natural and man-made events. It is a research and innovation action, and it had an initial duration of 36 months, but due to COVID limitations, it was extended for a 10-month period, so as to perform the physical demonstration physically. It has an overall budget of almost 5 million euros, and it is coordinated by the Institute of Communication and Computer Systems. Our consortium consists of 70 partners from 9 different countries, and among them we have 2 infrastructure operators, 2 end users, Technostaff in Italy and Egnatia Motorway in Greece. Here you can see the distribution of partners in several countries. So as you can see, we have Italy, Spain, Belgium, Germany, Luxembourg, Austria, Switzerland, Israel, and Greece. The concept of RESIST project is that is based on the idea that even though there have been great achievements in the field of transportations, for example, in bridges and tunnels and so on, they're still vulnerable to extreme events that can put the human lives in danger. And these events may be due to natural causes, for example, earthquakes, flooding, or high winds, and physical causes, such as mechanical impact. But they can also be due to man-made incidents or even to cyber attacks. The objectives of the project are based on 3 major concerns that are taken into account when handling extreme events. The first one is obviously to protect users and ensure as much as possible seamless mobility, avoiding any further human or financial cost. The second one is to prevent and predict such events, and also to increase resilience through vulnerability and predictive analysis, and also through risk assessment. And the third one, of course, is the reaction to such events through the provision of optimal information in order to minimize the impact and, of course, to restore the provided services the soonest possible. In order to achieve this, a set of innovations has been developed and deployed in critical infrastructures. So we have the FEHRL robots, drones that are used for inspection and mounting of sensors on bridges and tunnels, ultrasonic sensors and computer vision systems that are suitable for these drones, a secure and resilient communication system, cross-layer cybersecurity solutions, a mobility continuity module for passengers and freights under extreme events, risk assessment and management of these extreme events, and of course, the integrated resist platform under which all the other innovations are deployed, communicate among them, and exchange data. And here is the overall architecture of the project. I know it's a quite dense slide, but let me highlight the most important points. So in the upper right side, you have the critical infrastructures, where we have mounted some sensors in order to collect data and also to do this remotely, avoiding to sending workers on the field that could be dangerous for their lives. And it's also a time-consuming and costly process. On the upper left side, we have the RPAS, remotely piloted aircraft systems, the drones that have mounted on board some sensors and cameras. And they are used for mounting new sensors on the infrastructures to collect data and to the 2D images, and also to create 3D models of the structures. Then we have the communication layer, that is used for secure communication and data exchange with the ground control station, the RedCom module, and also for satellite communication in case of emergency. And below we have the application layer that is used for situation awareness and decision support, using information coming from all the collected data and images from the sensors, from vulnerability assessment models, behavioral factors, mobility continuity strategies, and also risk assessment and management. We also have the Resist platform that can provide real-time awareness of the situation, and also can recommend actions in order to avoid the impact, and also propose measures to increase resilience in the future. Further to that, we have the mobile application that is used for continuous communication and online recommendations between responders and citizens, for example, in case of traffic redirection. And these recommendations are also posted in social media, such as Facebook, Twitter, and so on. Across all these layers, we have the cross-layer cybersecurity system, providing awareness against cyber threats and attacks. So the validation of all these innovations and the Resist project will be conducted in real conditions and real infrastructures. 2 pilots have been defined. The first one will be conducted in Egnatia motorway in Greece, and specifically in bridge T9 in North Greece. And the second pilot will be conducted in Italy in Technostaff premises, and it will be performed in 2 parts. The first part will be conducted in the motorway A32 Migliores Viaduct, while the second one will be at the San Petronila tunnel. Currently, all developments have been completed, and the integration of all systems is under final testing. And the next phase includes the implementation of all these innovations on the infrastructure in order to perform the pilot demonstration. The first pilot will be conducted in next March 2022 in Greece, in Egnatia Odos. And the second pilot will be conducted in Italy in next May at Technostaff. And we hope that both pilots will have very successful progress. So this is it from my side. I hope I did not exceed the time limit. Thank you very much, and let me know if you have any questions.
Thank you very much, Margarita. You are just in time. That's perfect.
Great.
Do we have any question from the extreme circumstances and floodings we had in Belgium and in the north of Germany a few months ago? Definitely, you are addressing a very important topic. Very nice project. So this is to congratulate you, and I'm also would like to thank you again. So we will move to the next topic. I do not see any questions. Yeah, we have one question coming. So do you combine pickle mechanical models? Thank you, Jesus.
Actually, yes, thank you for the question, Jesus. Actually, yes, we also include some of the data, let's say, that we use to assess the situation, include the mechanical impact of the structures, and these data are collected through either visual inspection or through one of our drones has a robotic arm, so it takes feedback from the structure, and all this data, along with the models, mechanical models that we have, are all together assessed, and in order to identify the situation and select the best way to handle it.
Thank you. So I see several questions coming. I will suggest that we only pick the first one, and please, then we can maybe have answers directly in the chat because we will exceed our time. So David, you asked the questions. After the pilots, are there plans for scaling the technology approach, and how would it work at a network scale? Would you answer this one?
Actually, our end users, our internal end users, are already interested to further implement these innovations on their infrastructures. But this is still under investigation on how this can be deployed and, let's say, integrated in their maintenance procedures that already are in progress.
Thank you. May I ask you, Angelica, to try to answer the two next one directly in the chat? So we have two additional questions from Tony and Kirilo. I would like to move to the next presentation. Should we have additional time at the end, then we can of course come back also to question we missed. But please maybe try to answer our two participants directly in the chat. So thank you again for this presentation. Thank you for the questions. Some will be answered soon. And
thanks a lot.
Thank you. So I'm now pleased to introduce our next speaker, my colleague at BRRC, Carl van Game, who is a senior researcher at the Belgian Road Research Center, and also a partner of the Codec project, that is a project funded under a CEDAR, Conference of European Director for Roads program. So Carl, I'm pleased to give you the floor. Thank you.
Screen.
That's it. We have it, Carl. Thank you.
Okay. So thank you. I will present the results of the Codec project. This project was in response to a call of CEDAR that wanted to see how in practice BIM environments and asset management systems could communicate, share, link data both from the assets themselves and from the sensors or scanners. Today, the NRAs, they already use some BIM, but usually only on the design phase and the construction phase of road constructions or asset constructions. But it's not really used yet in the operational phase of the road assets. And they have also usually pilot projects with emerging technology they also have separate data bases with infrastructure information and asset management tools. So these things are not well linked together. And there are some standards around. So the Codec project tried to use as much as possible existing data formats, standards, approaches, but none of these were already oriented to the objective of the project, to link asset management and the BIM environment. So the first step, we developed the Codec data dictionary. This is a description of objects and their properties that are necessary for asset management, detailed enough, not too detailed, and based on whatever already existed. Also for sensors, the data from sensors, in such a way that also new sensors and new data formats will fit into this data dictionary. So here's a glimpse of how this data dictionary looks. It's a spreadsheet that can be read, if you know English, by a human person. However, for a computer, this is difficult to read. So the data dictionary was then translated in ontology. Ontologies are data technology that is specifically used in computer science for linking data. So the Codec ontology is actually an extension of the EuroTL existing ontology, so that all the things that are in the data dictionary can also be in the ontology that is then useful, can then be used by computers. The architecture that the Codec proposes is a layered architecture. Here on the picture below, we have the data sets. On top of that, the ontology with queries that can question these data. And then on top of that, the Codec API. This is a number of functions that use these queries. And these functions, they offer functionalities that can then be used in the top level in the development of small applications in existing software, BIM software, AMS software. So an example of the technical architecture. This can be implemented with all kinds of things, existing tools, existing software tools. That was the goal. It has to be generic enough. And whenever a layer is extended, this doesn't influence any of the other layers, so everything continues to work. So this is also an architecture that is there to evolve. So in order to show that this actually works, the Codec project also did 3 pilot projects. Each of the pilot projects supported or followed up by one of the CEDAR members, NRAs. The first one was on a tunnel. So a BIM model of a tunnel was imported in the BIM software Bison Manager. Then an API, the Codec API was used to write a small specific application that then allowed to link data from a sensor data from that monitor the air quality, for instance. And since these data say something about a part of the tunnel, these monitoring data were linked to wall panels. And then when this is done, the software, the ordinary traditional features, standard features of the BIM software can then be used for visualization and other purposes. Then another example is a bridge that was also loaded into Bison Manager with another application also just written with the Codec API, and the Codec API was then extended with using things from existing ontologies. So where data from visual inspections were linked to specific elements of the bridge, a safety index was implemented in this application in the BIM environment, so that it's easy to see for the bridge manager which element of the bridge needs some further attendance. And then the bridge manager can get access to the data that are linked to this element from within the BIM environment. And then the third pilot project was on a pavement. So here we did it the other way around. Pavement management is usually done based on maps, 2D maps, so in GIS environments. So here an application, a small application was implemented using the Codec API in ArcGIS, the software, a GIS software. Interesting information in a BIM model created by LiDAR was then made available and linked in with a section in the GIS environment. So here, the environment, the BIM environment, had to be prepared a bit. The notion of a slab in the BIM model, and then the slab and the subsection has to be linked together, identified which one corresponds to which one. And once that is done, useful information from the BIM model of that slab can then be accessed in the GIS environment. So more information on the Codec project and the results. The project is just finished a few months ago, last end of October. Can be found on the website of the project. The next step, of course, is that this must then be picked up by the NRAs, by software providers. More must be done on the standardization of all these things. But of course, this is beyond the scope of the project. I hope that this will be picked up by everyone involved. And last but not least, this was an effort of a whole consortium. So these are the partners that took part in the consortium. So BRC was mainly working on the data dictionary, but the results of this project is the work of a whole team. Thank you.
Thank you, Carl. Indeed, a work of a whole team on a very important topic, a very actual topic. So thank you for this presentation. So we can maybe catch one question. We will not have much time for 2-3 questions, unfortunately, but I'm very sure that the speakers of today, as well as the partners of the projects you can discover today, would be pleased to interact with you. I do not see any questions coming right now from the chat. So just again, then thank you, Carl, for this teasing. I would say in 7 minutes, it's short, of course. It is short, of course. So thank you, and please do not hesitate to contact Carl after this today conference. Thank you, Carl. So we will move to our next speaker, our next project. So it's about the RIMA project, and we will welcome Panagiotis Giannis. Hopefully, I did it well.
Yeah.
So
you got it perfect.
So you are the technical manager of the RIMA project, and yourself working at the University of Patras, I think.
Exactly.
Okay, so I will let you introduce RIMA. I will not do it myself. It's so please, the floor is yours. Thank you.
Great. Thank you, Javier, for this kind introduction. I hope you can see my screen and also the camera. Everything is set. Great.
Perfect.
So hello also from my side. I'm very happy to be here. My name is Panagiotis Karagiannis. I am a research engineer in the Laboratory for Manufacturing Systems and Automation, LMS for short, as you can see here. And we are part of the Mechanical Engineering Department of University of Patras. And today I will speak about RIMA. So we don't have much time, so I could speak for days, let's say. So I will give a very quick overview of what is RIMA. So if we can put it in one sentence, RIMA is a network of digital innovation hubs that are spread throughout Europe. And our aim is to digitize the European industry, helping SMEs introduce robotics technologies in inspection and maintenance activities of infrastructure. This project, of course, is funded by the European Commission, and members, as you can see here, are 15 partners that belong to 13 DIHs. These are research organizations mainly, but also universities like ourselves. And also part of our consortium contains associations like FEHRL from different domains that support our activities in the network. In general, infrastructures, it's quite big, let's say, targets. So we, in this project, we're focusing in six domains, in the infrastructures that belongs to 6 domains. And here at the top screen, you can see these domains, which are transport hubs, energy domain, water management domain, oil and gas, nuclear, and road, rail, and different kind of transportation infrastructures. Our target is to address all the actors in the value chain: asset owners, operators, service providers, technology providers, investors, and so on. And through our community to bring these actors together in order to help them digitize, as I discussed before, European industry. In order to achieve that, we have opened 2 open calls, and we are sharing 8 million budget in total to support SMEs to their activities. But also as partners, as DIHs, we are offering services. And as Xavier said, we are the technical manager of the project. So our role is to guide the DIHs and their mentoring activities to offer services and support to the DIHs. And by services, we mean like technology support or innovation transfer, matchmaking activities, creation of new communities, or creation of increasing of awareness and networking, and so on. So more or less, in a nutshell, let's say this is the RIMA project. And in order to give you a better understanding, I would like to speak to you about a few applications. And through these examples, you can have a better understanding of our activities and our innovation potential, let's say. Of course, we have selected road and transport related applications to be more within the topic of this event. And we would like to start with the 3RC application, which is an autonomous repair system without any human intervention that detects cracks on the roads. And using this robot manipulator that you can see here, but also specific tools and specific materials, this robot is able to move on a road, detect a crack on the road, and using these materials to fill in this crack and repair it. Here there is a link. You can also use the QR code if you like. There is a public video in YouTube from which is also this screenshot. The partners of the consortium were VLM Robotics and Hydraulic Aquitaine. And from our side, the support was mainly on the bullets that you can see here. We provided testing facilities in order for their developments to be tested, market analysis support, support on technologies like human-robot collaboration, supervision, the safety of the operator, and so on, support on the standardization for their developments and different security norms, and how they can scale up their solution. The next application is a different kind of robotic technology, let's say. Now we are having a drone that is equipped with cameras and is able to fly above pavements in an airport area and detect problems on the different pavements. The partners of this application were FEHRL and SuLogic, and the support, the services provided by the RIMA DIHs were again accessing different facilities or provide support for night mission case study. And again, like before, there is a public video that you can find from the link or the QR code with the tests that the team has performed in the different facilities. The next one application is again an application that is related to a drone, but it's not just a drone, it's a tandem between a car and drone in order to perform 3D mapping in an area. So there is a car with a QR code on top and the drone is following the car performing 3D mapping. The next one is called Preventabot. And now again, we move to a different kind of robot, which is this pipe-shaped robot that can travel through the pipelines, the drainage system of a tunnel and perform maintenance and inspection through a camera of the status of the different pipelines. And again, you can see some services that have been provided and support that has been provided by the RIMA partners. I'm trying to speed up a bit because I'm running out of time. Another application is the RAHIP application, which again, you can see kind of not exactly underwater, but a robot that is surfacing on the water. And the aim of this robot is to harvest macroalgae plants that are formed within ports or lakes and create problems to the seas. And also the important point I would like to highlight for this application, that the people from this team applied also in the second open call of this of the RIMA open calls. These applications are some examples from the first open call. Now we are in progress of running the applications from the second open call. And just as a brief, again, discussion, I would like to speak to you about GreenBee application, which is using a different kind of drone, let's say, without a helicopter system, in order to perform road inspection activities and detect defects using visual systems. The team is consisting by two partners that come from Lithuania. So we would like also to highlight that we have a widespread activity throughout the whole Europe. The project started this October, and these are some initial services that the team has asked, and we are in contact with them in order to provide further support. In order to conclude this quick presentation, we have mainly two results that we have so far. The project is still in progress, so we have kind of midterm, let's say, conclusions and results. The first one is that the impact for the SMEs is quite positive from the services that they receive. We're not a venture capital. We don't just give money, but we also provide knowledge and know-how. And this is something that is very interesting for the applications and the SMEs. And we see that a lot of them also applied in the second open call. And the other outcome is that there is potential for us to continue also after the end of the project through a community tool that has been built. It is a website that also you will find the link in the presentation that will be shared afterwards. And through this community tool, the DIHs can share practices and combine their efforts, offer services to SMEs, and in general, as I said at the beginning, favor the innovation and digitization throughout Europe. As a final remark, I would like to inform you about an event that is organized by Speed Robotics in December 15. In this link, you can find more details. And now open for questions, while in parallel in the background, let's say, I will play a video, a short video for RIMA project. Thank you very much.
Thank you to you, Panagiotis. Indeed, a lot of very interesting projects running in this RIMA network. So thank you for these words. There are some questions coming. Let's take one again, given the time schedule and answered. So David is asking, I don't know if you can read the chat. Okay, so
the examples have the high TRL level, so it's not so research. And this is correct. Actually, in the proposal phase of the applications, we are asking for the applicants to come with a solution that is at TRL 5. And the aim of RIMA project is to help them to reach even TRL 7. This is assessed firstly by external evaluators that are independent evaluators from the RIMA partners and the RIMA consortium. And we ask for information, for description from the applicants in order to understand and ensure that they have some concrete results, let's say first prototype, to prove that they are in TRL 5. And then we help them to move forward up to TRL 7. So I hope I covered all of the questions, because there were a couple of question marks in there, but I think that everything is addressed. If not, I can follow up through chat, of course, as Xavier suggested with the previous speakers, not to take much time.
Thank you again, Panagiotis. Thank you also for the questions coming from the audience. Yes, I suggest we move to our next speaker, indeed.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. So our next speaker is Rade Ashdin. He's a founder and exploitation manager at Infrastructure Management Consultant, IMC, and a partner of the FEHRL project. So please, Rade, I let you introduce this interesting project, I'm sure.
Thank you very much, Javier, and I hope you hear me. If not, please react, and you probably see my screen as well. Well, actually, I'm a president of IMC and exploitation manager in FEHRL, but I'm coming to it. And FEHRL is maintaining integrity, performance, safety of the road infrastructure through autonomous robotized solution modularization, which is somehow connected to my previous speaker. As again, I'm not a project coordinator, but rather exploitation manager in this position, this role. I'm going to present you this project. Now, the short presentation here is going to give you some ideas about the project. I'm not going to go over all this table of content, and further on describe you the FEHRL project in a nutshell. It's, as you probably know, a Horizon 2020 research innovation action. And we have 42 months of duration. We at the very beginning, though, we started only in September, so it's have some time. We have envisioned about 669 person months, and the budget's about 5 million euros. We are also trying to develop a solutions technological area, which are at least TRL 7 based on the technology readiness level, as you already probably know. The consortium member have 15 partners and 3 linked third parties. You can see here we have a mixture here between the small and medium-sized enterprises, non-profit associations, academic institutions, large enterprises, and publicly owned enterprises, as well as some third-party members that are helping us in performing this project. We are actually tackling several technological areas, and I'm going to glance through them in a short overview. The first technological area is optimized robotized machinery for construction upgrade of large maintenance interventions, which means not a small patching, but rather the whole pavement. That includes feeder, paver, and rollers, and they are all being being directed by GPS and sensors at the same time. And we also envisioned, in order to have a long-term performance or long-term monitoring of the payment, we also envisioned to have automatical installation of fiber optic sensor that can serve later on in a payment management and monitoring. The second technological area is a little bit different. There is not a large scale payment, but rather patching. Like in this particular example, these are small robots with a 3D printing solution that you're able to find the patch, to find the crack or the pothole in the roads, and then using cold paint solution to patch this particular area. So that would be the second technological area we are tackling. The third technological area is modularization of road construction or upgrade through industrial prefabrication. There is a solution by a TESI system with a safety barrier, gutter, and curb, integrating all together in a storm dam as well, which are then being very short and very efficient installation on the road. And we are hoping to combining that with the robotized payment that we can provide some interesting solution for our clients. Technological area 4 is essentially related to safety or to fencing and signaling of the work zone. As you probably know, one of the main reasons this whole call has been started because we have in Europe quite a few of accidents on the work zones, and we will try using robotized machinery also to reduce that. But at the same time, the fencing of the work zone, we would like to use robots as well, which are able to position these drones using artificial intelligence algorithms and monitoring the safety condition according to the regulation. And at the same time, using drones, so the time we are able to effective alerting and signaling procedure for the accident prevention, which means integrating or filling into navigational systems in order to prevent accidents. The technological area 5 is actually related to the upgrading of management systems, both pavement management system as well as a traffic management system, whereas traffic management system, as you can imagine, are rather on the short term, which means having the work zone as presented here in this small sketch here, we have exactly the position of the work zone, and based on that we can feed into the traffic management system, and then the people would realize that there is a work zone ahead which can be moved itself because the robotized work zone, and in this manner we increase the safety of the passengers and also the workers in the work zone. On the other hand, we have a long-term dealing with it based on the sensor that I already mentioned. We have a kind of digital twin of our payment that will then increase rentability, and of course, just-in-time maintenance actions using correct deterioration curves and performance over time. So this is a technological area 5. Now, what are our objectives here? Expected impact, we cannot say for sure. We are only at the beginning, of course. We are only 3 months or 4 months into a project. We are hoping to reduce 50% fatal accident due to maintenance works. This might be a little bit ambitious, but we think that by reducing number of people in the working zone using robotized machinery, we can achieve that. And also at the same time, around 20% of reduction of traffic disruption due to the maintenance work by reduction of cost, of course, and on the other hand, by a reduction of the time necessary to perform these sections. And that is would then boil down to the improvement on network capacity, which is the same order of magnitude. Now, where we are now, we are actually at the beginning, probably September 21 we started. We have now the communication and simulation plan. The exploitation plan itself is going to be only September 2023, which means the next year. And then later on, we are coming to the phase 2, where we are going to do the validation. Now, validation is going to happen In Austria, we are fortunate enough that ASFINAG, which is an Austrian operator of motorways, has a so-called living lab, which is near Graz in southern Austria, in a Styria region, and where we are going to probe or to demonstrate these 5 technological areas that we are going to tackle in this project. This belongs to this 10T corridor, this particular motorway. So looking ahead beyond the consortium, of course, we are communicating quite vividly. We have already FEHRL website. We are also in social media. We are going to organize events. There is going to be external stakeholder group, which is our non-binding advisory board, which is on February 23, which means in 2 years roughly. And dissemination, exploitation, we are organizing a workshop. There are going to be a couple of them in next year, webinars, of course, scientific population, as you can know, and there are going to be a catalog of technical solutions. Of course, this is according, also the communication simulation station are going to follow the rules of European Commission. So with that, I think I'm within a time limit, and I would like to thank you for a kind attention. And I'm, of course, ready for any question if you have some. Thank you.
Thank you, Riley, for this indeed sprint. I would say it's short, indeed, short time you have. So thank you for this presentation. So we can maybe address one question if we have one at the moment.
I'm not sure whether
I don't see any questions right now in the chat, at least. So of course, please feel free to come back to all different speakers if you need anyone.
Thank you very much.
Yes, thank you also. So we then move to our next topic, our next speaker. So we'll be Aoye will give us a few words about the direct project. So Ao is he's working at TRL in UK and is the project coordinator of the direct project. So a project funded under the CEDAR Transnational Road Research Program. So please, Ao, I give you the floor. Thank you.
Good morning, Hava. Sorry to be late, everyone. I'm Hao. I'm a senior consultant from TRL. I'm leading the direct, which is a project sponsored by CEDAR. This project is working with connected and automated vehicle in future. I will share my screen. Bear me a second. And is that okay for everyone to see the screen?
Yes, yes.
Okay, great. Thank you. I believe you are all eager to see the future occurrence of automated vehicle and automated infrastructure as well. So in the next decades, that vehicle would eventually evolve from partial automation and then to full autonomy without human input. So this is a long-term and a complex transformation. And there's a strong need for complex infrastructure transformation and to build digital infrastructure to support this. So the purpose of direct project is sponsored by CEDAR to design at a strategic level to support this evolution, to make road authorities to be successful digital road operators for connected and automated driving. And this project is providing a guidance to explore the vision and the challenge, bring together stakeholders and finding ways of what we need to do and when we should do it and how we can do it in a better way. Today, I'm going to present the project in several sections. I will keep it short and at high level. I will introduce the project vision, the beginning, and then the technical approach, and what is a core deliverable under this project, the project team for direct, and the project plan and the work packages for this project. So the direct project vision is to develop a common framework in order to support NRA, that is the National Road Authorities, to provide a better engagement with vehicle manufacturers and service providers, identify any core requirements and clear responsibilities, including any tools to calculate cost and benefit of providing different level of support to future connected and automated vehicles. So if you consider there's a lot of elements related to the future, the direct project actually contained all elements that's required to be considered. For example, in direct project, we consider the common vision for providing this platform for connected vehicle or automated vehicle to actually how we developing the infrastructure. And we also provide a framework and subject area. That's a set of a list of areas we need to working on to making sure we provide essential support for these vehicles. We also provide approach of realization. We want to develop examination tools to help this. We will provide recommendations and advice for it. In the same time, provide a realistic way for benchmark and road mapping. So what is the core deliverable we're going to deliver under this project? We call it coverage package. So it's including 3 kind of deliverables we're going to deliver. So the first one we called coverage framework. The framework is actually a list of knowledge or subject areas we need to consider in order to support a connected vehicle. So it's not only technical subject area. For example, how we design and operate the infrastructure, how we apply a connectivity to support the infrastructure, connected vehicle, how we apply the latest digital twin and apply in the future for connected vehicles. But also, it's also including other like non-technical elements, for example, the legal, how we apply or change our legal aspects or traffic regulations for future, how we assess the investment deserves the money, can we optimize the funding in order to get a better benefit. That's all covered in this framework. And the second part is, well, we will define the maturity level. Maturity level is based on the first part framework. When we have these knowledge areas, we need to find out what is the quantitative or quantitative indicators on assessing the maturity of the release of this infrastructure for future needs. We need to capture these indicators in order to prepare them at different levels in order to making sure each indicator indicates what's the actual need at different stages. The third one we call the level of service approach. Once we got the maturity level, we need a way to support or guiding the NRAs at different level, making sure they live smoothly at different levels, particularly related to vehicles automated from partial automation to full automation. In the same time, infrastructure needs to change from a different way to supporting these. Can we avoid any risk or opportunities during the between? So these all 3 deliverables covered what we're going to deliver in this project. I will introduce them in after slides. So we were talking about the benefit. So for coverage framework, the benefit is actually stakeholders need to understand what is the requirements from both the supply side and the demand side in order to share the vision, because this is not the single vision from NRA's point of view. They also need the input from the stakeholders' point of view to understand the whole vision, what they need to do. And also this CRF coverage framework will be used to clearly understand what infrastructure maturity level and options for adaptations in order to meet the future needs. Also, it helps to establish the responsibility across different NRAs and service providers, actually. So what's the benefit of coverage maturity level? Of course, it develops a list of levels or parameters that we can use to measure or managing the process in order to assess the deployment and operations of the infrastructure. And also it allows these indicators to incorporate it in NRA strategy or service delivery objectives in order to making sure they meet the future challenges. And also these indicators will be used to complement with other indicators. For example, the ISAD, and other automation indicators for vehicles. The benefit of the coverage level of service approach, of course, is provide a practical approach to enable NRA to remain the head in the field, reducing any risks that could be countered based on the logic gained from the framework, and also enhancing the opportunity to control the railway network. This will be also not a rigid way to follow one path. For level of service approach, we'll consider different situations of NRA, and then making sure they're not following just one rigid path, but also has different ways to explore how to achieve the target based on their current capacities. The project is now sponsored by SEDA, and the TRL is the leading consulting organization. We have 6 partners in this consulting. This including Europe from Ireland, and VTT from Sweden, VTI from Finland, and also FEHRL and TU Delft from Netherlands. So we actually are all working towards with this project, and each organization leading one work package. We have subcontractors in the UK as well to support cost and benefit analysis. This is a part of the work packages, how we organize this. We have work packages like stakeholders management to managing the stakeholders from OEM and NRAs. We have a work package called review and evaluation to capture useful literatures and gather what we can find from the literatures. And then in gaps that has found will be engaged with the stakeholders to make sure we can fill the gap. After the 2 work packages, we will define a framework, as we mentioned, coverage framework, and then this framework we will use as to develop case studies and road mappings. FEHRL is actually working with dissemination activities in this project. Considering this is just a brief session, this is the information we provided. Thanks for if you have any questions, feel free to raise.
Thank you, Ao. So thank you for this presentation, and indeed you have interesting work to achieve on this direct project. So I'm looking forward for the results in a few months. Do we have any questions? We can again try to address one if we have. We are 5 minutes behind schedule, but I guess that it's still manageable. Nothing seems to be coming directly. So again, we can also get some questions later. Yeah, what is the timeline for this project? Thank you, Kirillo.
Oh, yeah, the project is a 2 years program. Actually, we started from September this year. It will be 2 years.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you, everyone.
So we will then move to our next speaker, and we will, for very practical reason, also we'll invert the 2 last presentation. Thank you, Judita, for accepting this, and thank you, Elko, for being our next speaker. So you will tell us a few words about the Myriad EU project, so funded, so an ongoing Horizon 2020 project. You are an expert on infrastructure and assistant professor at the Institute for Environmental Studies at the Vrije Universiteit Amsterdam, so in the Netherlands. I let you introduce Myriad EU. Thank you.
Yes, thank you for the flexibility. My son is sleeping now, so let's hope he sleeps for another 10 minutes and then we're all fine. So thank you for the opportunity to present the Myriad project. So my name is Elko Cox. Maybe just to start off already, so infrastructure and transport infrastructure is just a relative small element. Well, it's important, but it is one element of this entire project. So it's a little bit of a different project than the others project that have been presented already, which I was finding super interesting already. So the Myriad project, so as Xavier already mentioned, it's Horizon 2020 European Commission funded project. So we've been quite creative as usual with the acronyms. But just to summarize the meaning of the acronym, so the project pretty much focuses on multi-hazard risk assessments for risk-based decision-making. And I will go into a bit more detail, of course, later on in the presentation. So we have 17 project partners across the EU, led by the Institute for Environmental Studies, so my group, in particular by Professor Philip Ward, who is also the head of my department. The project just started as well, so it just started, well, 3 months ago, and it will run for the next 4 years with a budget of around 5 million euros. So what does it mean in practice? So full-time, there will be, I think, around 7 or 8 PhDs and 2 or 3 postdocs working full-time on this, and of course, other people as well across all the project partners. So there's quite a lot of, yeah, pretty much hardcore research also being done within this project. So a little bit of a buzzword alert here, but I will just highlight a few elements that I think that might be interesting also, or hope to be interesting also for the people here within this, within FEHRL. So the Myriad's EU vision is to catalyze a paradigm shift, and that sounds, of course, maybe a bit too much that we can chew on, but I think we'll get there in the end. But the idea is that we nowadays quite often see when we look at risk modeling, and it doesn't matter so much for which sector or assets we're focusing on, but quite often we still have like a single hazard focus. So we either look at floods or earthquakes or tropical cyclones. We often look at one sector. So let's say we look at the impacts of extratropical cyclone on roads, or there's another study look at the finance sector, or there's another study looking at buildings or at the energy sector. So often the single sector approach, and often also looking at one system, and that's the systemic approach. That we're also trying to achieve, that we look at how these different systems talk to each other. So if the transport system is being affected, does it have any implications on emergency management or reconstruction of the energy sector, as we also saw, for instance, in Germany over the summer during the very intense flooding in the Ahr Valley and surrounding areas, because all the roads were flooded there. It was also impossible to recover and reconstruct any of the electricity substations to also recover energy, which is then necessary to further speed up the rest of the recovery process. So how does failure in the different systems influence each other? So look at dependencies and interdependencies between the different systems. So trying to sort of make the shift from single sector, single risk to multi-sector, multi-risk is really what we're trying to achieve. And turning that into actual usable tools and methods for policymakers, decision makers, and practitioners, with, in the end, the final aim to be able to really improve our decision making. How can we better think of adaptation measures? And I think an particularly key element here is looking at these trade-offs and synergies between sectors, hazards, and scales. Because we can, of course, think that adapting to flooding may not mean that we're also reducing the risk to earthquakes. Or if we adapt the energy sector, do we immediately also adapt the transport sector or the emergency management? So really trying to think of how does making one sector more resilient to climate extremes, how does it affect the other systems? And we're trying to test then our models and data and methods in 5 pilot regions, where we then assess the direct and indirect impacts, look at interregional effects and cross-sectoral risks within Europe. So of course, this all sounds still a bit fluffy and buzzwordy, but we just started, so there are not too many real concrete things to show yet, unfortunately, but I assure you there will be some interesting stuff coming out. Not going, of course, through all the details of this framework, but just to highlight a few elements that we're doing. So in the end, everything will be put into a web-based dashboard, which will be open access and open source for everyone. I should mention it already, as there was a question earlier already. The aim of this project is that all the data, all the event sets that are coming out, all the risk models, everything will be open source and open access, naturally, of course, as well. So there are a few different elements that might be interesting. So there will be a handbook written or a wiki-style platform with all the definitions and such that I just mentioned already. We have these 5 pilots where everything will be tested. And then we have a more research side of things where we develop new multi-hazard event sets. So flood event set, earthquake event sets, storm event set, but also how they interact to each other. So look at both cascading events and consecutive disasters. So what if we have one earthquake happening, and what if a flood happens 3 months later while we're still recovering from the earthquake? What does it mean for our response? So really trying to understand these different dynamics between hazards occurring after each other or at the same time but different locations. What does it mean to your exposure? What does it mean to your resilience? What does it mean to your vulnerability? So really trying to better understand these different systems in relation to multi-hazards. And as you can see in red, as I mentioned already, everything will be open source software and open access. And in the end, everything will be used to think about disaster risk management pathways, think about adaptation, think about making the entire system more resilient. So what are then the 5 different case studies that we're going to test the different models on? I should mention actually that next to the 5 case studies, we also have, and that there FEHRL comes into place. We have a few sectoral representatives that are extremely important also for validating and checking the models and data that are being developed. So before mentioning the pilots, maybe good to also mention these different sectors. So we have infrastructure and transport, in which then FEHRL is our important sectoral representative. We have the energy sector, in which Aon is involved, ecosystems and forestry, which has wetlands in there. And then we have tourism and food and the finance sector. I mentioned that one already. And then we have the 5 pilots, the North Sea, Scandinavia, the Danube area, the Veneto region, and the Canary Islands. So maybe most importantly, what's in it then for FEHRL and members and partners? Well, FEHRL is one of the key stakeholders within the Myriad project on infrastructure and transport. Next to the other stakeholder represents the quality check the research and ensure that the tools and methods are useful in the field. And as I already mentioned at the beginning of the presentation, we're really trying to make a paradigm shift of going for multi-sector, multi-risk. So we really aim to reduce risks together. So what this means is that we're very eager to collaborate with practitioners in the field. So if you feel like this multi-hazard, multi-risk approach is valuable within your own work, then we're very keen to team up and think about how we can mutually benefit each other and how we can collaborate. So I think those are the most important things to highlight. The project website is not online yet, but hopefully next month or so. Given the time, I'll just stop right here. I hope that in the future I can share some more exciting actual results, but now we're just started and get going. So thanks for the time to present this.
Thank you, Elko. Yes, it's again an interesting teasing of this complex project, I would say. So the call for collaboration is open. Hopefully you will get also some feedback from participants today participants. So do we have already any questions that you would like to address to Elko before we move to our next speaker? Nothing coming right now. Okay, then I will again thank you, and
thanks.
We stay connected anyway. So thank you also to Judita Grazulite, who accepted to move a bit his speech. She is researcher at Vilnius Gediminas Technical University, Vilnius Tech in short. It's easier. And so we started with a FEHRL initiative. We'll finish with another FEHRL initiative dedicated to low noise pavement. So Judita, please tell us a few words about this. Thank you.
Thank you for inviting me here. It's a pleasure to be here with all you, with all speakers. And it's a pleasure to see that all of you are interested in this initiative that I will present today. It's on low noise pavements. So for those of who don't know me already, I am Judita Gražulytė, a senior researcher of Road Research Institute of Vilnius Gediminas Technical University and the leader of this initiative. Today's topic is of particular interest since road traffic noise is the second biggest environmental problem negatively affecting health after air pollution. It is estimated that at least 20% of EU population, it means that 1 in 5 people lives in areas where traffic noise levels are higher than 55 decibels during day, evening, and night period. This threshold is defined in the Environmental Noise Directive, and according to this directive, actions have to be taken to reduce noise in these areas, since exposure to such high levels is harmful to health. The conducted studies show that exposures to high levels of noise cause annoyance. It disturbs sleep. It also leads to irregular heartbeat, what causes heart disease, and sometimes it causes even heart failure. Seeking to prevent these consequences, it is vital to understand how road traffic noise is generated. In general, road traffic generates noise by engine and by interaction between tire and pavement. The engine noise has been reduced over the last years, and in addition to this, assuming wider uptake of electric vehicles, tire pavement noise is becoming dominant even at low speed. Consequently, more attention has to be given to this kind of noise. The level of tire pavement noise depends on the vehicle speed, the characteristics of tire, and the characteristics of pavement. Thus, first two of them are selected by drivers, while the last one is significantly influenced by the government policy. Thus, tire pavement noise can be effectively reduced by requiring specific pavements. In this case, it's low noise pavements, and these pavements should be constructed at least in areas where people live. As you can see in this slide, experience in low noise pavements significantly differ among countries. The Netherlands is a pioneer in this field. The first trials were constructed back in 1972, and today more than 90% of highway network is covered with low noise pavements. I'd like to highlight here that the highest interest in this topic in all EU countries was observed in the last 10-20 years. And it is as a result of mandatory application of the Environmental Noise Directive. During this period, during this last 10-20 years, many international and national projects focused on low noise pavements, their development, their performance, maintenance, as well as measurement methods, how to measure the noise, that are successfully implemented. And here you can see some of them in which FEHRL members have been involved. However, many questions are still unanswered. For example, how to improve resistance to traveling, since rivaling is the most important cause of the end of service life of low noise payments, how these payments perform in cold climates, and how to improve this performance if there is the need. What methods should be used to measure noise, since there exist several of them and different countries apply different methods, as well how to maintain and extend the service life of existing low noise payments and other questions. Seeking to find answers to these questions, FEHRL members launched an initiative on this topic, and it's called Low Noise Payments. 14 institutions expressed their interest in this topic and have already joined this initiative. Here you can see all of them who have already joined. The overall aim of this initiative is to collect existing experience and share best practice within partners. There are three main areas where we are focusing. The first one is identification and if there would be a need, development of advanced low noise pavements that profoundly absorb noise and have remarkable durability. We would like to identify the most advanced low noise pavement that currently exists and determine what else could be improved. The second one is harmonization of road noise measurement methods to measure noise more precisely and uniform in all EU. We would like to compare the results against the different methods and provide some conclusions and ideas about regulating noise measurement methods within Europe or introduce some changes to the current one. And last but not least area where we are focusing is improvement in maintenance and rehabilitation techniques to extend the service life of existing low noise pavements. Since low noise pavements in most cases are constructed as porous pavements and their maintenance differ from regular ones, we would like to create guidelines based on our experience how low noise pavements should be maintained during winter and summer seasons. As a final point, I'd like to highlight that successful implementation of this initiative could encourage wider use of low noise pavements in various countries. Furthermore, to foster the exchange of current experience among members, we are planning to submit a proposal for cost actions. So if you would like to learn more about low noise payments, share results and collect data of your relevant projects, as well as present your ideas and innovations in this topic, you are welcome to join this initiative. You can do this by contacting me. Here is my email or FEHRL office. So thank you.
Thank you, Judita, for this quick run across the initiative. So we understand that this initiative is open to, I would say, non-FEHRL members, because right now the 14 members are from FEHRL, but FEHRL institutes, but it's open to everyone, I would say.
Yes, exactly.
Great, thank you. Any question from the audience before we end this session, this interesting session? I think that all the speakers are still in the virtual room. So, should you have any additional questions, please? There are some questions that have been addressed in the chat. So, thank you for this. Okay, so I think that we will end here right now this session. So thank you to our 8 speakers. We presented 6 projects, 2 initiatives. addressing very important topics, very relevant topics right now. So if you, maybe you have seen, but all the PowerPoints will be available on the website of the on the FEHRLmeeting.com website. I would like also to thank the FEHRL office who prepared this this session in particular. So there are always a lot of logistic issues. So thank you to Angelica also who addressed different questions I had personally for this session. Hopefully you are not you are not too much unhappy with the light delay we have. I will then also give the floor back to Thierry for this the closing remarks. Thank you to you. It has been a pleasure for me.
Thank you very much, Xavier, for running extremely well this last session. Thanks everyone, and thank also to all the speakers of this last session. I think it's been 2 half days, as said in the introduction yesterday morning. The FEHRL edition 2021 has been run in a very different way compared to the other one, because it's the very first time we ran FEHRL through a fully online event. We decided for that purpose to reduce in a way the time and not to have long days of virtual events, but to concentrate the input and discussions on very few sessions, only 4 eventually. 2 roundtables yesterday addressing strategic elements about research, the main priority strategy, the link between applied research and the necessary priorities that are choices around that towards a common vision. We also had a chance to go because we understood that the research activities is essential, but it's also necessary to have a continuity from the research to the innovation in order to avoid, in a way, falling in the Death Valley, as we call it time to time. And on the second day, we really wanted to have a specific focus on the very not new issue, but to put the spotlight on an issue that was definitely under the shadow for many years and up to now. I mean here the biodiversity and the relationship with the transport sector, and especially the transport infrastructure. So we had this very morning a very lively roundtable, as you could see, also involving not only the policymaker and the research, but also the money side, the bank and the investment aspect to get this full picture. And at last, in the session that was just run now, we wanted to highlight a few running projects that you can see are very diverse. First of all, we wanted to give the visibility that our 2 FEHRL flagship initiatives, BDPAVE and Low Noise, deserve. These are very new initiatives that will definitely bring a lot of good reflection and good results soon, but also are meant to embark the rest of the community in Europe and worldwide in these very important issues. And you could also see that a number of other issues related to resilience, related to robotics, are now very much embedded into the core business of the road infrastructure engineers. So with this, I'd like to thank very much all the moderators of the different sessions and roundtable. I'd like to thank very much all the speakers who really gave very interesting input into the discussion. I'd like to remind that for the first time, we had more than 230 participants registered for FEHRL. We had actually the participation from 34 countries, which is very high for our event. So we are very pleased to see that in a way, the interest around infrastructure is growing and also is growing internationally, and where we recognize the need for this collaboration and cooperation around the globe. And so with that, I'd like to thank all the participants for registering to FEHRL. We will meet in 2 years' time. FEHRL is a biannual edition, so we will meet again in 2 years' time, possibly fully online, possibly fully presential, possibly hybrid. This is something that we will see. And in the meantime, we will see in many other occasions, and definitely one of the very big occasions that will come is the TRA 22, which is going to be in Lisbon exactly in 1 year from now, where also retribution towards very good ideas or a very good career in terms of research. I mean, there the competition of TRA and TRA Vision will also be awarded. So I'd like to thank you all very, very much. I thank also all my colleagues who have been very supportive to that event. And with this, I'm closing now the FEHRL edition 2021. Thank you very much, and see you soon. Stay tuned. All the information are now going to be online. The videos, the recording, the videos of each of the session, as well as a presentation, as it was said. Bye-bye, and have a nice end of the week, and happy Christmas and good end of the year. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you.